Put on your mental track shoes and run with me. This is the Powwow with Myra. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today's guest is Chris Reyes. Chris is a newly YouTube blogger whose focus is on mental health based on his own experience. He's also a single father of two. And so help me welcome Chris. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's go ahead and start by telling us who is Chris, where do you come from? Where did you grow up? And then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So yes, Chris Reyes, YouTube, Reyes _ get fit 87. Make sure you smash and like that subscribe button.
Hey.
I'm 36 years old. I come from Lubbock, Texas, which is like 5 hours west from here, and born in '87. And growing up, my mom had me at a very young age. She had me when she was 16.
If you want to bring this up a little bit, that way.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom had me at a very young age, had me when she was 16. And from what I remember, and I do remember a lot, and that's one thing with me is like I have very great memory. So it was just me and her. She's the true definition of an independent mom, someone who does it all by herself. I remember her walking with me with one hand, groceries in the other hand, would always make sure that she put myself first. So growing up, with me and her, we struggled. We struggled financially, but she always made a way. She always found a way, and because of her, I am the man that I am today. So growing up, lived in Lubbock to when I was 10 years old, and then we lived in Kansas City for about 3 years. And that's where my mom had met my dad. Well, stepdad, but I consider him my dad. He's been there for me my whole life, and also because of him, I am the man that I am today. And we lived in Kansas City for about 3 years, from I want to say it was '97 all the way to '99. Moved back to Lubbock for a couple of years, and then we moved here New Year's Day of '99.
New Year's Day.
Yeah, so I great memory. I have really great memory. So been here pretty much all my life. So I would definitely say Dallas is definitely my home. I can't think of anywhere else to be.
Yeah, awesome. So do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a brother we're literally 10 years apart, like literally 10 years apart. Both of our birthdays are in January. His is on the 31st of January, mine's on the 5th. So he's 26, so it's never hard for us to forget our birthdays. We just count 10 years back. And I do have a younger sister. She's 23, and her and my brother are more close. So my mom had, between my brother and me, she waited a long time to have another kid. But them two are really close. So yes, they are my baby brother and my baby sister.
So you guys have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, I helped raise with my brother and my sister, and I was taking them to school and everything. But my brother and my sister, they have more of a closer relationship, just because they're 3 years apart, so they even went to the same school together. They even did everything together. By the time that they were already like in middle school, I I was already kind of living my own life. I already had my first child, so and I wasn't living at home anymore. But as when they were younger and stuff, I was definitely there. But even now, we have a great relationship. My brother lives in San Antonio now, and then my sister, she lives here. She's engaged now, so family is definitely expanding.
Beautiful, as it should.
Yeah. And my brother, who has two kids now, has two daughters of his own. So my two nieces, first time uncle right here.
Oh, and now your daughters have cousins.
They do, and my oldest daughter, she's about to be 13. She'll be 13 in October. She's very excited to be in her teens. And my youngest daughter, Amaya, she's about to be 10. She's just excited to be in double digits. So I just told her, it's like when you get older, it gets harder. Life gets harder.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You start seeing life.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
So when you were living with your mother before
Mhm.
you moved to Kansas,
Mhm.
what was your life like?
Man,
From what you can remember.
yeah. So having a good memory it's good. Sometimes it's good, but then sometimes it's bad. So, uh, what I'm gonna share, because I put a lot of thought into this.
Mm.
Even people, I worked at my job for about 5.5 years, and not even the closest people to me know about this. Only a handful of people know what I'm about to share with the world. So, as I mentioned, my mom, she was very independent. She worked really hard, but we didn't really have anybody. My real dad wasn't really in the picture. We didn't really have, a babysitter, or she couldn't afford a babysitter at the time. So I remember her taking me to work with her, and obviously, the manager can only do so much, and kind of just told her, "Hey, look, you need to get a babysitter, or we just can't give you hours." So I do remember my mom had found this family of workers that she worked with, and they offered, "Hey, we have a babysitter that you can leave, your son with while you work." And if you can imagine, my mom worked countless hours. So I remember staying with this family, and it it was literally only for about a month, because we were, so one part I left out. So before moving to Kansas City, we moved to Amarillo, and which is like about an hour from Lubbock. And while we lived over there, staying with this family had like a really dark side, evil side. And for about a month since of me being there, I was sexually abused for a month as a kid.
Mm.
I was 4 or 5 years old. Mind you, when you're that young, you're a kid. You don't know what's being done to you. You don't know what's being done to you. And when the way that these people put fear in me as a kid, they would say things. If you mention this to anybody, we'll beat you so hard to where you'll never see your family again. So as a kid, it scares you. So I grew up with that fear. I grew up not telling anybody. And when I got into middle school, as I got older and I started to learn what was done to me, it really it was kind of hard, just because I was like, wow, so that was done to me. And then you hear about stuff on the news and about it happening to other people. It wasn't until when I was 23 years old, mind you, this happened when I was four. I was 4 or 5. I'm 23 years old. I already had my first child, and that's when I decided to talk to my mom about it. So she didn't know about this through this whole time, so I kept it with me. And I remember she put so much guilt and blame on her, because she felt like she failed as a mom. And I told her, "Don't feel that way. I'm okay with bringing this up to you now." And I think after when I had my first child, like it weighed on me. Like I needed to talk to someone about it. And what person could I talk to more about it than my mom? I feel like she needed to know. But at the same time, I didn't want her to feel guilty, because I knew that she was. And I'll never forget, she left that night, and I didn't hear from her. I didn't hear from her for like almost like a few hours. I got worried, and she was at church going at confession, because she felt like she needed to confess of a lot of things. And I just told her, don't put guilt on yourself. It was something that I just kept secret, just because I just I was embarrassed to know what was done to me. And as a kid, like I said, you don't know what's being done. And I do think that that played a factor, as far as me just being kind of sheltered off, because my sister and my brother will tell you that I was really quiet as a child. And again, it was just due to embarrassment, because I learned and I researched, and I was like, how could these people do that? You know? And it would be very hard for me to kind of grasp of that. But I just told myself, I can't focus on that. It was in the past, and everything happens for a reason. And that is something I can utilize to being stronger, to being the person that I am today. And
Yes.
I'm okay. I'm okay with sharing that with people,
Yeah.
because I know there's people out there that been through this, and I can guarantee you, Myra, they probably have not told anybody, because they're ashamed,
Mm.
just like I was. But you don't have to be ashamed of it, because it wasn't something that you can control. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you could share it to help other people, so that way for parents, they can do better, with their children. Not saying that my mom didn't do better with me. She just didn't know,
Right.
you know. But it was funny, because when I did tell her, she tried to track these people down 2 decades later. And but that was life before.
So when you were 4 and 5 and this family was doing to you, I mean, obviously you mentioned there was fear.
Mhm.
What were you thinking at the time as a child?
Mhm.
Do you remember kind of
I
how
remember
you what you were thinking?
I remember everything from the feel of the carpets on my feet. I remember how they would blast music to cover the screams. I remember the smell of cigarette. I remember everything. It's something that you'll never forget, very specific details. And when you're a kid, you're just thinking like this is what normal people do. Like I'm
Mm,
young. I didn't know. But they did a very great job of keeping me quiet. Like I don't know people of kids nowadays, with social media and everything, with cell phones and everything, like there's really nothing that you can keep
the
quiet nowadays. The
awareness.
awareness. So I'm very thankful for that, especially having children.
Mhm.
But back then, the technology wasn't as it was, as it is now.
Right.
So I mean, that's how the way I was feeling. It was just more of fear, but I couldn't do anything about it. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to tell, and
Did you think about who could I tell? Did that ever cross your mind?
it did when I got older. I want to say when I really started to get into like middle school. Well, I want to say it was probably a bit earlier than that, because you even now kids are very curious at a young age,
Mhm.
and that's something that I kind of battle with my daughters. So you get curious and you start to learn about these things, and at that point, yes, then I was wondering like, should I tell somebody? But it was more so of me just being more embarrassed to talk about it because I didn't know if that was people are gonna be like, oh, he's a freak, he's a this kid, he's weird, or he's just looking for attention. And trust me, that's not attention I would have wanted anyway. So at 23 years old, we're talking about almost 2 decades later. That's when I finally decided to say something because I just remember, and it probably had a lot to do, Myra, with me having my first daughter. Because when I saw her for the very first time, and having a child, it's the biggest blessing, and right then and there that you're going to do everything in your power to protect your child.
Mm,
So I think for me, it was just more of just weight on me that I needed to talk to about it. And
mm.
I knew I didn't want to talk to anyone about it except my mom. But obviously since then, there's a handful of people that know my kid's mom, a couple of relationships that I had, I was honest with them about it. Family knows, but as far as like coworkers and stuff like that, these people don't know. But I'm okay. I'm okay because, like I said, if I'm gonna be on here, I want people to know what I really went through.
And I believe you're okay because it's hard talking about these things, right?
Hmm.
So when you're able to talk about it
Hmm.
or at least begin to talk about it,
Right.
I think that is part also of the healing process.
Right.
Um, and it's a long process, like anything else. It's a process. Now that there's things that are more complex than others, for
Hmm.
example yours,
Right.
right? So but I do believe, and I can see it because you're talking about it in
Mhm.
such you just seem so strong,
Right.
at this point. So I know that there's definitely a lot of thought
Mhm.
that has happened between 4 or 5 and today
Right.
even,
Right.
right? Because you mentioned you only told that to your mom and then your closest people, like your
Right.
relationship, which,
Mhm.
it makes sense.
Right.
So coming out and talking about that and
Mhm.
your experience, that just shows how far you've come.
Right.
And I can't wait to see even where you're going
Right.
because uh I I can't relate, thank God,
Mhm.
but I've heard many stories,
Mhm.
and they all speak, and they say how at first they can't talk about it
Right.
until they're older, until they grow up and they start the healing process, and
Right.
they've healed some to where now they're able to share that
Right.
experience.
Right.
So you had your daughter,
Mhm.
and what was what was the aha moment or the thought that said, "Yes, I'm gonna tell my mom"? Like, what about becoming a father of a daughter.
Right.
What about that made you say, "Yes, I'm gonna share it with my mother"?
You know, when my daughter Brianna, when she was, I mean, she's it's funny now because when you look at even then, so she's about to be 13. So now we're talking about 13 years ago. Because she was literally, I want to say she was probably like maybe 2 or 3 months old. I think for me coming home every day after work and just seeing my baby girl, just seeing her, and I've always told when I was younger, I told myself I never wanted to have kids. I couldn't imagine myself having kids, much less two daughters. And I always just thought to myself, like, am I ever even going to be a good father? And I told myself that, thinking with what happened to me when I was younger, could I even be a good father? Could I protect them? What could I do? Like I'm going to fail at being a father. And the people closest to me will tell you that sometimes I do have fears. Am I doing enough for my children? Am I am I being more self-aware? So I worried about that. So to answer your question, the aha moment that I had was I told myself I'm going to be a damn good father. I'm going to.
Mm.
I'm going to be a good father. I know I have the confidence in myself that when I see my baby girl, and I worked two jobs at the time, and I wanted to provide for my family. So I don't know if it was just God speaking to me that day,
Mm.
but I just remember waking up that morning and I going to work at 8. I remember my at the job that I had at the time, my hours were from 8 to 4:30. The moment that I woke up, I felt guilty, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, I mean, is there something gonna happen? I have a bad gut feeling. And as the day went through, that whole remember I told you the feel of the carpet on my feet,
Mm.
the music blaring, everything was just going through my head that day. I didn't wanna talk to anyone that day. I didn't wanna be messed with, and I knew I was like, "Okay, I gotta it's time. It's time to talk to somebody." But I knew it was my mom. It was my mom. It had to be my mom. I remember my grandmother was in town and staying with us at that time, so it actually ended up not only just being my mom, but obviously my grandmother was a part of the conversation, so, she was a part of that. But I knew what it was gonna do to my mom. I knew it was going to affect her, and that's why I didn't want to talk about it to her, but I felt like she needed to know.
Mhm.
If something were to happen to me that day, I wanted her to know. And she told me exactly what I knew she was gonna say. She felt like she failed, and I told her, "How can you fail at something when you didn't know? Because I guarantee if I would've told you something then, you would've done something about it." But it was my choice. I mean, obviously, as a kid, these people did a really great job of instilling a lot of fear in me. I mean, when you're a kid, I mean, you can go to a 3-year-old kid down the street and bully him, and he's gonna be scared of you, and that's what was done. So don't feel like you failed at anything,
Mhm.
and
Did these people that take care of you, did they have other kids they took care
no,
of?
no, they didn't have any kids. They didn't even have like any pictures of family, hung around on the walls. And again, I'm 36 years old and I can remember that so vividly. But no, they did not have family. And one thing I will say, when when you're a kid and you're not knowing what happened, and again, like I said, I'm a big strong believer in God. So like back then, you don't know what kind of mysterious ways that God's working in. But I remember a month from what was supposed to be for a very long time. It only lasted a month, and my mom told me one day, "Hey, I quit my job. We're moving back to Lubbock." And I just remember, "Yay, I'm not gonna have to come back to this bad place anymore." So I do remember that. So I was definitely saved at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Was it a male and a female? Was it a couple? What kind of people what
It
was taking care of you?
Male and female.
Male and female.
And
What age group would you say?
from what I can remember, I want to just based off I wanna say, like, maybe, like, in their late 20s, 30s. One thing I do remember, I remember, like, an elderly lady always being there. I do remember that, but she was always locked in a room. So, thinking about it later on, because I remember my mom even questioned me about that. She was like, "Do you remember a lady being there? Did she ever do anything about it?" I was like, "No." So, um, when my mom, because like I said, even then she tried to track them down, and she did end up finding of their whereabouts, but both of them had died from AIDS. So
Go
Yeah,
figure.
so nothing would have been done anyway. So to go and like talk about this publicly, I think it's very important for people out there who did go through, you know, trauma abuse like that. Don't be scared to talk about it, especially if you have children. Because I was a coward and I didn't want to talk about it because I don't want people to think of me weird. But eventually, you're gonna feel that weight on your shoulders, and it's a huge weight that I didn't want anymore. Because at that point, I knew I had the confidence that I was
Mm.
gonna be a good protector of my children, and so I didn't know I was gonna have another child, and then we ended up having another one 2 years later, and so that protection only gets even stronger. And so I consider myself, me personally, being a great father, one of the greatest fathers out there, and that's why, like, for my mom, I have the most respect for women who are single moms, and I see what they do and see how hard that they work for their children, and because my mom is like my mom is my everything to me, and sh
Yeah. I think it's a great message what you just said about like coming out and talking about it.
mhm,
And so for the people that have gone through a traumatic experience
mhm,
such as abuse,
mhm,
physical abuse,
right,
or any kind of abuse, really. So I mean, I understand your daughter was your motivation, and you
mhm,
had that confidence. Where do you think that confidence came from? Because when you said I had the confidence for the people that don't,
mhm,
I feel like confidence is it's you kind of need confidence,
right,
right, to kind of help to have the guts to do
mhm,
something that's courageous.
mhm.
How did you gain, or where did you get that confidence from?
Adversity. Adversity, and the reason why I say that is because I know that my kids are gonna go through adversity one day. I know that they're gonna go through especially, now that, she because even now she's in the 6th grade and she's already telling me of things, like crushes on boys and stuff like that, and things that she's, you know, she was actually just recently she was involved in a situation to where there was a boy sexually harassing her, and it scared her, and she went to the principal, and police had to get involved and everything. And I remember I'm at work, and because their mom was now married, so they do have a stepdad. He's calling me, it's like, hey, there's a situation with Brianna, I think you should know. And so even that, and I remember my daughter telling me, I don't want to go back to school because obviously it was a big deal, and she felt like going back to school that people were going to make fun of her. And so I explained to her, I was like, "Don't think that way." And I explained to her, "You're gonna go through adversity, and this is part of adversity." And that's where the confidence came from, because I want to be an example to my daughters that you're gonna go through things in life, whether if you want to keep it secret, like I did, or if you want to go public with it. But you need to know how to face adversity, because you're gonna go through that, and you just need to know how to counter it, and how to counter it, and just support yourself with people who will support you.
Mhm.
So, and that's one thing that I stress to my daughters. Now, my daughters don't know anything about what happened to me, and I don't plan on telling them, probably till when they're like older, because I don't want to scare them. They're kids, so they stuff that they see like on TV. They hear about these shootings and stuff, like the one that happened in Uvalde last year, and they were scared to death to go to school. And so I don't want to, you know, tell them anything that would happen with me. So they're already they're already aware of everything, and but I did explain to them, "You're gonna go through things in life, whether if
Yeah.
it be, are is he gonna ask me out to prom? Am I gonna do good on the STAR test? And, you're gonna go through those adversity things, and you just have to learn how to counter it. But as your father, and you're blessed with an awesome stepdad and your mom, our job as parents and step parents is to help guide you through that."
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. So essentially you're preparing them kind of mentally
Mhm.
to be strong.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay. So then you move to Amarillo and
Mhm.
then Kansas, where you meet your stepfather, who you see as a father.
Right, right.
So, um, when your mom brings this new guy,
Mhm.
what were your initial thoughts as a son?
I was 8 years old at the time, and at the time, like, I didn't like him. I didn't like him at first. I think that's natural for any kid who sees their mom dating someone, whether if you're a daughter or son. I didn't like him at first, and but he was there for me. He was there to scold me. He was there to spank me. He was there to ground me. He was there to tell me, if I'm failing, you know, uh, everything's gonna get taken away, like no sports or anything. And he was being a parent. And when you're young like that, especially when it comes from step parents, you don't really realize that they're doing this because they love you. And I remember he would always tell me, he would every time, if it was after like a spanking, if it was after a grounding, he would always say this one thing over and over: "I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I love you." When you're young and when they're telling you that, you're just like, whatever. But as you get older, and especially as a father, you understand that. And even to this day, when I see him, I tell him, thank you for everything that you've done. And but yeah, at the time, like
It was hard.
it was hard because here I am with the male figure in my life, and kind of dealing with the trauma that no one knows about, because again, no one knows.
Right.
But I knew that I wanted to see my mom happy, and my mom was happy, and yeah, he took care of, and he had a daughter of his own, so I had like a stepsister. So I think that also made it easier as well, because I had a sibling there, and then my brother was born, and so I think that's when I knew that, like, okay, things are gonna be okay, because
Mm,
we were building a family.
yeah. Did you how did your mother discipline you alongside with him? Was she in the picture disciplining you, or was she more like just kind of letting him be that father figure? How did your mom play a part?
That's actually a good question. My again, I stepdad, but I like using the word dad
You
because
can
he's
say
my
dad.
dad.
I relate because I have or had a stepdad that I never called him stepdad. It was my
Mhm.
dad. So feel free to call him dad. I
Right.
got you.
Yeah, he was actually more of the man of the house, the
Mm,
the disciplinary person. Yes, my mom would be there to kind of jump in, but it was more so of like she just let him do everything, and thankfully so he did, because he was hard on us, well, hard on me and my stepsister. And but again,
what
he
were the expectations?
expectations were do good in school, and he definitely like A's and B's, definitely the grades were good. He didn't want no hanging around with the wrong crowd,
Mm,
because he would always say hanging around with the wrong crowd is going to get you in a lot of bad places. And he was right. And also, because we would walk from school to home, and he would always like walk straight from school to home because you don't know what could happen. And he was always the one that would do like the random like drives up just to see what you were
mm.
doing. And so he was the true definition of a father. But yeah, my mom definitely kind of led it up to him. But yeah, she would definitely be in there to kind of give her 2 cents. But he was definitely the male figure of my life.
Yeah. So if you and I were friends in high school, who
Hmm.
were you at the time? What were you like in high school?
Man, in high school, I was so in. I kind of to answer that question, I kind of have to go back to middle school,
Mm-hmm.
because in middle school, I was this nerd, wear big glasses, because I have to wear either glasses or contacts. Right now, I have on my contacts, but back then, we really couldn't afford contacts, so I had like those big bifocals. So I was more of like the nerd, the geek, always getting made fun of and everything. And um, but what really changed for me as far as like popularity, when I was in the 8th grade, I tried out for track, and I ended up being one of the fastest kids in school. So when we ended up going to track meets and everything, that's when people were like, "Hey, that's Chris. That's the fastest kid in school." So then I started to notice people like wanting to talk to me more. And then going into high school, when you're in middle school, you kind of go up against all the district schools. So in high school, then you kind of get together with all the kids that went to those different middle schools. So people were knew of me, and I knew of other people. So it was actually it kind of got to my head a little bit. So I just thought myself as this untouchable person, and I wasn't my my head wasn't where it should have been. I wasn't really focused on school, and
What was your focus
um my focus was
at the
on,
time?
as a kid, you're focused like, okay, girlfriends talking to different girls at the same time, just doing stuff that you shouldn't have been doing. Not really, really. There came a time which I feel like every kid does this during their like early teenage years. That they're very disobedient, and like
They're finding their
they're
way,
finding their
they're
way.
testing their
Right,
limits.
right. So that was me, and I was definitely on the verge of not being able to graduate on time. So yeah, it was definitely, I was doing a lot of stuff I shouldn't have been doing, running away from home, and there definitely was a phase to where I felt like, I was just my own person, just doing my own thing. And my dad, and I'll never forget, one day I ran away from home, and while my mom was over there trying to look for me, he told my mom, "No, let him go, let him go." Mind you, I'm like what, 15, 16. Let him go, let him learn, let him learn, let him learn, let him figure it out. And if he comes back tomorrow or whatever, or most likely we'll get a call that he ended up in jail or whatever. And if we get that call, we're gonna let him sit in there. Let him figure it out. So that just goes to show you of the type of dad that he was.
Yeah.
So why other my people are like, dang, he was a harsh dad. No, he wasn't. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was
Mm.
like, I was struggling, and I'll never forget, he came in. I was back then we had payphones, we didn't have cell phones back then. Um, I was like, "Hey, can you come and pick me up?" And his first thing was, "Have you learned your lesson? Because I'm not gonna be doing this with you anymore.
Mm.
You're gonna get your act together, and you're gonna stop this." And from that point on, everything changed.
And in what grade were you in high school when this happened?
It was my junior year. My Yeah, it was, yeah, definitely my junior year going into my senior year.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was really during the time where I just didn't really care about anything. And I was literally on the verge of like not being able to graduate. And it was just, calls getting, my dad and my mom kept on getting calls from like teachers and stuff. And it was just a really bad, time of my life, just kind of just doing what kids do and teenagers.
What was the reason you decided at the time you were independent enough to leave home? What was the what were, yeah.
So my dad mentioned, if you remember earlier, my dad mentioned stop following these so-called friends because they're going to put you in a lot of bad places.
Mm-hmm.
So I would see other kids do it. So I wanted
Oh,
to be cool and be like them. So I would follow
yeah.
literally everything that they would do.
So was there a particular group of friends that you were just trying to like follow their steps essentially?
Yeah, just trying to, because I would look at,
Would they tell you what to do or
they wouldn't so much tell me what to do. I just knew that my parents were more strict on me,
mm,
while their parents let them do whatever they want.
oh,
And that goes into play with my dad saying every time when he would discipline me, I'm doing this because I love you.
mm,
So for the parents that allow their kids to do whatever they want, it didn't really care. The parents obviously didn't care if they were going to end up in jail or end up dead or whatever. But
yeah,
my dad did this to me because he loved me and he wanted me to know the difference between right and wrong.
yeah.
So when he would remind me these kids of yours, these so-called friends are going to put you in a lot of bad places, it, that's where it was leading me down to.
Yes. So when you decided to make the call and said, "Hey, come get me,"
Hmm.
and your dad says you can't do this again,
Hmm.
um, what goes through your mind? Do you like what's going through your mind at the time?
I remember I stayed the night at a park. I was at a park overnight in the cold and no food, nothing.
Mm,
So while some people may think that's harsh, like my dad did that for a reason. Like he's telling my mom, "No, don't call him. Don't bother him, or don't go look for him. Don't worry, because I guarantee he's coming back. You need to let him learn. Because if you keep on, because I have already, this was like the second or third time I had done this, and he was tired of it. If you want, so he would always use the word, "You want to be grown. You want to act like you're grown. Okay, go out there, see how the way the world is. I guarantee you, you're not ready for it."
mm,
And so now
So what was your plan? Where were you going?
I had no plan. I just felt like I was being a rebel.
Okay.
These kids, their parents let them do whatever they want, but my parents are so strict. So why can't I do whatever I want?
So you stayed, you didn't even stay over at a friend's.
Mm-mm.
You stayed overnight like at a park.
Right, right,
And you're about 16 or
right.
so.
I mean, I remember I ran away. It's funny. I ran away to, a girl's house one time just to kind of hang out with her, and I really just didn't know what I was gonna do. Like, obviously, I wasn't gonna stay the night there. What was I gonna do? I just didn't want to go back home, so I didn't
Mhm.
really even put much thought into it. Like, okay, well, where am I staying tonight? So it's the little stupid things that you think back now,
Did you
and
pack anything?
no,
Nothing.
I
Just
just rode my bike and just went just traveling. Hey, I'm just gonna just take it. I don't want to say day by day, but just take about an hour to see where the day takes me.
so
So,
you were a track star
mhm.
in junior high. Did you continue playing sports in high school?
Yes. So, ended up playing track was my main thing just because I always had like long legs. So I don't know if it was more me being fast. I think it was just more of like bigger strides, but also playing football as well. And I liked playing basketball. I just wasn't really good at it. I was a good defender, but just not really like a good shooter. So I always did that. But football was always like my main thing. I don't know if you remember when we used to do the flag football things at Monty.
Mhm.
So I was always loved doing that. But yes, football and track and basketball here and there, but track was really my main thing.
How were your grades in high school? Did they have the no pass, no play?
Yes, yes. And as a matter of fact, just to go and just show you the how my dad was, my my sophomore year, I had failed history. I failed it with the 67. My coach at the time was going to allow me to play. I don't know how he was going to swing that, but he was going to allow me to play. And my dad was like, "No, no," and he literally went up to the school and talked to the coach and made me empty my locker and take out the pads and give them back to like my dad did that. If he doesn't pass, he's not playing.
Wow.
So that's how the way my dad
He
was.
truly cared.
He really did. And
Because it takes energy and effort and
Mhm,
timing. I mean, he has to go there. He has to talk to these people.
mhm.
It's not just a press of a button. It's things he
Right,
has to do. For what reason? Obviously.
right. And mind you, I'm not even his blood. I'm not even his kid. So, he loved me. And it's funny because talking about helping raising my brother went through the exact same thing, but his was way worse. His disobedience was way worse. Like, and I'm not trying to make him sound bad on camera, but to see where he was then to where he is now, an amazing brother, a definitely amazing father, and he's an amazing friend to everybody else. But he too went through that phase in high school to where he kept on getting sent to court for truancy for skipping class, hanging out with the wrong crowd. um, One time my mom had just bought a new car and he in the middle of the night stole my mom's car to go out with pick up these friends, end up totaling that car. And the kids of the parents of the kids that you were riding with, they were all wanting to press charges against my mom since my brother was the driver, and he was on the verge of not wanting to of not graduating. But the thing is, my brother, he was a superstar in football. He was like one of the greatest receivers in the district. And we're talking about like when he was in middle school, he was already getting like high school coaches looking at him. He was already a freshman, sophomore in high school. There were already colleges, big time colleges reaching out to him. And so he was kind of going through this phase, and this is where the big brother part comes into play. And mind you, I already had my first daughter at this time, so the confidence that we talked about, the adversity, I'm already starting to build on that. So now these are still my baby. This is still my baby brother. And so, because I was 23, 24, so he's 14, 15 at the time. So now, like, I'm over here trying to be there for him. And while he's going through this whole thing to where it was bad, he was causing my mom a lot of anxiety. And because at that time, my mom and my dad, they separated because they haven't been together since, 2009. So yeah, they were already separated. So and I think that also had a lot to do with my brother's disobedience. Just the separation took a lot on
Mhm.
him, and so with
The big brother.
mhm,
So that's where the big brother
that's
comes
where the
in.
big brother comes in.
And so what do you how do you what do you tell him as you're seeing his steps and they look similar like yours, but maybe they may seem a little bit worse than
Mhm.
yours?
Right.
What's how do you how what do you tell him?
So at the time when I was, because I had worked 2 jobs for most of my life. I don't know why. I just did it. Like I would work one job in the morning and go to a night job. So I worked at a night job to where it was a lot of kids who worked there. And I remember there was a kid who was hanging around with the wrong crowd and he went out drinking and he totaled his car and he had passed away. This kid was like 20 years old and he ran into a pillar off of 35 in Louisville. And I remember when I would leave work, because it happened right by work, you could see like where they did like a little, memorial for him. So I remember, because I had already knew that my brother was causing a lot of issues, but at the time, you got to remember, I'm trying to raise my daughter. I'm with my own family,
You got a
but
full plate.
right. But at the same time, that's my brother, and I wanted to help in some way. So I think the final straw for me is whenever he wrecked my mom's car, and I was just like, okay, all right, I got to do something. So I remember I picked him up one night, and he has no idea what's going on. He was scared of me at the time, and I take him to the little memorial thing where the kid had died, and I told him, "At the route that you're going, I know I'm not your dad, but I'm your big brother, and I've been there before. What you're doing, I've been there. I haven't been to this extent before, but I've been there. At the route that you're going, this is how you're gonna end up." This kid was 20 years old, okay? And as sad as it is, he made a choice, and this is where he ends up. What you did with your friends and this little girl that you're trying to impress, who you're probably never gonna end up spending the rest of your life with, your kid, that could have been all of y'all. Or it could have been you could have been seriously injured, eating through a straw for the rest of your life. And I remember when I took him there, it kind of sunk in. So then after that, I remember we went to a Burger King by our house and I sat down and we talked for hours and I was like, why are you acting like this? This is not you. You're a great kid. Something's going on. And he had, he was, like I said, he was really good in high school. The summer before, because this was all in his junior year. The summer before his junior year, he had tore his ACL. So he knew that was going to be a setback for him. And he ended up losing like his starting position. And I think he admitted to me that the family, and I'm guilty of it because he was so good, Myra, that we really felt like he's gonna make it to the NFL. Like that's how good he was. And he even told me, he's like, I feel like the family puts a lot of pressure on me to be something that I don't I don't know if this is what I want to do. I don't know if I want to play football. And I feel like the family expects so much out of me. And they're, obviously I'm trying to stay on top of my grades and obviously with my injury, I just don't know if it's something I want to do. And so I kind of found myself just doing what I want to do, which was, doing the wrong things. So we weren't, as a family, we were pushing him like, hey, do good in football, do good in football. But we weren't letting him be himself. We weren't letting him do what he wanted to be. And so the downside of it was that he started becoming rebellious and just doing things that he shouldn't have been doing. And after that talk, I don't want to say that I was the reason why everything changed, but I just told him like, look what you're doing to mom. Like you're causing her a lot of anxiety right now. You have these kids' parents are reaching out to her saying that they're gonna sue her for the injuries that caused for them because you were driving. You're a good kid. It's not too late. It's never too late. And sure enough, man, he started. I used that same phrase that my dad used, and I used it with him. These kids, so-called friends, are gonna put you in a lot of bad places, and he started doing the right thing. I would call him every day, like, "How's your grades? How's it going?" You know, you don't have to play football. I do think you should let the family know the way you feel. And he started doing good, and he started doing the right thing. And sure enough, he graduated on time. And look at him now. He's a great father with two kids, and he's
Amazing.
he's only 26 years old, but he's definitely a man. He's so good to his fiance, and he's a great kid.
Sounds like a
Mhm.
proud brother.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, and he had that older brother like that. It's almost like a second. I mean, there's 10 years difference,
Right,
right? So
right,
it's not like shut up. You're only like a year older than me,
right,
right? Like
right,
there's a whole 10 years, so there's a level of respect. It sounds like he respected you at the time.
right, right. Absolutely.
and showing him, like, you didn't just sit in his room and lectured him or
Mhm.
even, get onto him in a negative way
Right.
or in a way that he would put his guard up,
Right.
right?
Right.
You showed him something, a road that could be there if he followed those same
Right.
steps, right?
Right.
So you talked to him and you showed him, so he
Mhm.
saw that, and it sounds like the perspective
Right.
was implemented, or a different perspective,
Mhm.
and who knows, maybe you could have saved your brother's life, by just
Absolutely.
being open with him and
And I
and
t
understanding.
and I told him, I was like, "I know it's a little bit more than that. I know that the separation from mom and dad has a lot to do with it, and because I know it affected my sister as well, and it's funny how the way the cycle goes. So I'm there for my brother, and then my brother was there for my sister. So me and my sister kind of grew up always. We grew up bumping heads. I don't know why, but maybe it was just more of the brothers picking on the little sister. But my brother and my sister were more close, but he was the one there for her to kind of get her from doing the wrong things. So
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so you're in high school, you're playing sports, and you run out of your home, you ran out
hmm
thinking, who knows, nothing, right? You didn't
right,
have a
right,
plan.
no plan.
You decide, okay, I need to call him back and come get me. And so, did you finish off the year
hmm
basically? And those friendships, what did you do with those friendships? Were they still there, just not as influential, or what happened to those friendships?
Um, Well, I mean, you know who your friends are, and again, at the time, I was so young, I didn't know anything of. I mean, obviously they were just bad influences. That's all they were.
Yeah.
So I just continued on just with doing the right thing, and they weren't really there. So you could tell it was just kind of more like, okay, well, we'll make new friends. But I kind of focused more like on sports, and I ended up in my going into my senior year, I was like in a 2-year relationship, so my focus was just on this one person, and she was a great person that so I had my focus on that. She had got really close to my family and everything, so
Your
there was
girlfriend at
mhm,
the time?
right.
Okay.
So there was really no distraction other than that, and then sports, and just finishing off the school year and everything.
Okay, so
Mhm.
this is where you find a girlfriend.
Mhm.
Was this the same girl you left home one time, or is that a
No,
different one?
no, it's just different. I was Like I said, I was, what's the word for it? I was one of those kids.
Rebellious?
Yes, I was one of those kids where I was just like, "Oh, I can have anybody that I want to," and it's funny because when I think about it, I'm like, "God, why did you have to give me 2 daughters?" And I feel like karma's gonna come back to my dad. But, I mean, that's why I'm, like, there as a father, like, "Hey, look,
Yeah.
look out for these signs." Like
So your girlfriend at the time, your next point of focus, when do you start dating her? Senior year,
Um,
junior year?
we met I was a senior and she was a junior because we had algebra class, so it was kinda one of those, like, mixture of grades
Okay.
classes, so, yeah, and so we started dating, and,
What did
um,
you see in her that attracted you?
I was horrible at math. I was horrible at math, and so she would always help me with my homework and everything, so I think that obviously led us into talking more. And at the time, like, I was working, I got my first job working as a host at Chili's, so I was able to afford a cell phone, and she had a cell phone, so we would, like, text and everything, and but that was the start of it, we met in math, and she would always help me, and I think it was more so at first of just, like, using her, but then the attraction started to fall into place, and
Mm.
but,
Yeah, the
mm,
affection started
right,
growing.
right.
Yeah,
Mm.
okay, and so you have a job, and what made you want to find a job?
Because I wanted another part of my dad's parenting, which again I thank him for. I wanted a car. I wanted all these nice things that all the other parents would pay for their kids. And my mom and dad was like, I'm not paying for none of that. You're gonna get a job and you're going to take care of all that on your own. Because if I do it for you, you're not learning anything. So my parents were more old school in that factor. So they were more old school as far as like, you're gonna get a job, this is what you're gonna do. And um that's how the way
That was the
that was
inspiration.
the inspiration because
Yeah.
I wanted to save up for a car and I wanted, to have like the nice clothes and like, all the nice things. So that was my
Yeah,
motivation for
makes
it.
sense. I mean, it's right the time where
Hmm.
y it makes complete sense, and it's a great motivation to, I think getting a job, especially were you, a waiter at the time or
I was a host.
a
Yeah.
host or
Hmm.
but any job, it gives you that experience to interact with people,
Hmm.
and it gives you responsibility.
Right.
And
Right.
I think, like, that's how things start, like, as when you're born, obviously, you have 0 responsibilities, but as you start growing up, you add maybe, other than school, obviously, if you can take care of school, that's a responsibility, and then if you can add a job, that's
Right.
another responsibility
Right. Right.
that comes with more tasks, I guess,
Hmm.
and you have to show up on time, and you
Right.
you have to be respectful, and you have
Hmm.
to follow the rules of wherever your job it has, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so that's what did you learn from your first having a job?
Hmm.
What was the biggest lessons from from working at a young age?
Well, because I was also going to school too, so I was
Right.
balancing school then playing football, and so
Mm.
I would work on weekends, and I would school and football would be during the week. So it was definitely learning the balance of it all because I just never I worked Saturday and Sunday from like I would sometimes work like double shifts. It just depended if because I was when you're that young, you have so much energy.
Right.
I mean, us at our age, we're
We're more selective
yeah.
with our
You're
energy.
right. So when you're that young, like, yeah, you can balance it all. So, but it was more of the balance of everything. And then once when I graduated, obviously there was no school, and if there's one thing that I do regret, which is not really like looking into college because I never went to college. It was just more so like I just wanted to work, and because I was still saving for a car, and um, it was just more focused. It was more focused on work at the
At
time.
the time.
Hmm.
So where in your life are you where you get the news that you're gonna be a father?
Yeah. So the the one where I was in the relationship when I met in school, so we dated a couple of years, but then we kind of went our separate ways. And then
Okay.
like about a year later, I had met somebody. We had met, and fast forward about like a half a year later, we find out that we're having a baby, and at the time I was 22 because
Okay.
she was born in August of 2010. So I was 22, so still fairly young,
Okay.
still fairly young. So at that time, I remember very specifically, when my kid's mom came to my house and we sat in her car and she broke the news. I literally got out the car and I like literally ran down the street because I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And I
Unexpected.
unexpected still at the time with the minimum wage job, only paying like $7 an hour. So I just didn't know what I was gonna do at the time, but when you're young and then when you're doing stuff like that, you have to know the consequences that could happen. And so I think that was kind of more of the eye opener, like, okay, you know,
Mm.
but then you start to, then I started to think about like my past when I was younger, and I was like, I know that's definitely gonna take a toll as far as like me being a father, but I didn't want to think so much into that because we needed to get through the pregnancy first. We needed to get through the 9 months and everything, and once when the baby's here, and obviously even when the baby does come, she's gonna be a baby, so we'll still have plenty of time before she, starts getting in the real world for me to worry about that. But it was definitely something I needed to start thinking about.
Okay, so yeah, that was after high school.
Mhm,
So in high school, your experience that you had as your traumatic experience with
mhm,
getting abused,
mhm.
how did that affect you in high school? Or did it?
Honestly, Mara, it really didn't, just because at that time I really had so much of to distract me from
Okay.
that with sports. And when you're in high school and you just got so much going on, you have like they had what they call A days and B days, so you
Yeah.
just have so much going on. And then I was also working, so there was just a lot to distract me. So
Okay.
I didn't. I mean, there was a part of my life where I just really didn't. I just didn't really have time to think about it.
Okay, well, that's That's good. I'm
Right.
glad.
Yeah.
That's actually
Right.
that's a good thing. So when did I'll ask that question after, I think. After you graduate from high school,
Mhm.
what are your goals? What's your plan once you graduate?
Mhm.
You did it. You thought maybe at some point you weren't,
Mhm.
um, or I don't know if you thought about it, but you were at the verge of not
Right,
graduating,
right.
right? So you graduate, yes. What's in your head after?
Really, the plan at the time was just I just needed to work just to
Mm,
get. Well, man, obviously at the time I
at
just
the
wanted to have
time.
money, but then shortly after I knew I was going to become a father, so I knew that in my mind I'm like I didn't really get a chance to experience having fun or whatnot, but hey, nothing's more better than have a blessing of having a kid. So
Yeah.
it was really more just work, and I knew I was like, okay, I need to get a second job. So I just felt like the responsibility of getting a second job. So it was just more about that was just my plan. It's just working, trying to provide for my family, and just being the best father that I could. That was really the plan. But as far as like a plan or like a goal, I didn't really have that. I didn't, and I that's one thing I do regret. And but it's something that I have now. But back then, I didn't have that.
Yeah, because you graduate. Are you 18 when you
Hmm.
graduate, and then you're about 21 when you're gonna become a father?
22, 22.
22,
Hmm.
22. So that is what, 4 years?
Hmm.
So when you graduate, you really have no goals other than what you know, which is get to work.
Right, right. Just working, save up for a car, and just try to do what you can, like, when you're so young, just to kinda just live life. Because I was still living with my parents, and at the time, I was like, I wanna get my own place,
Hmm.
and that was,
Yeah.
like, that was, like, the goal to have, like, get my own car, get my own place,
Yeah.
so.
Well, yeah, those are good goals. I
Mhm.
suppose that when you don't, I guess when you don't have any thoughts other than, or other goals, that I would say that's probably
Right,
the goals, right? Be
right, right.
independent,
Mhm.
figure out my way out through life. So where do you meet the mother of your
Um,
daughters?
we worked together at a movie theater,
Mm.
Cinemark 17 off of Webb Chapel in Dallas, so we met over there, and, we dated for a couple of months, but then we kinda stopped talking, and then when my brother played football, one of his best friends was the sister of her best friend, so we went to a game, and then I saw her, then we just kinda just reconnected at the time, and it it just went from there.
Yeah, okay. So you run out, you start panicking when you get the news you're going to
Mhm,
be a dad.
mhm.
What do you do next?
I didn't wanna tell anybody in my family just yet, just because I just didn't know. Because again, like, I didn't have, like, a plan, just working, and I had one job that paid minimum wage, so I just remember my mom at the time, like, I would help her out, like, with little stuff around the house, and so once when I finally did tell, like, my family, from what turned out to be panicking, as things started to calm down, the people started to get more excited, including myself, and then, when we first had the sonogram first heard the sonogram so I can hear my baby's heartbeat, and then that's when reality
Mm.
started to kick in, and the excitement
Mhm.
really went to 100, so at that point, I was like, "Okay, I wanna have, like, a second job so I can have, you know, more money coming in." My mom would always remind me having a kid is not cheap. So, that was, like, my drive at the time, just trying to make money at the time.
Yes.
Mhm.
Do you move in with her, or
Mhm.
do you?
Yeah, we stayed with her and her mom and her dad, so we kinda had, like, our own room, and so we lived there for I wanna say about, like, 4 years, and then in 2013, then we ended up having our second child, um, and then we eventually ended up getting, like, our own place, and, by this time, my youngest daughter, she was, like, 3, and my oldest daughter was, like, 5 because 'cause they're 3 years apart. So, that was, like, what, 2016, 2015, 2014, 2015, and then, we just felt like it was best to kinda go our separate ways just through problems that we were having.
Did you how did you know you before, obviously you decided to part ways?
Mhm.
Did you think that was gonna be your forever? Like, at the time when you guys
I
were
mean,
at the time?
at the time, yeah. Just because like when you have the kids with them, you're like, okay, well, this is the mother of my child. Like we're gonna be together, forever. But I can honestly say that I mean, I did stupid things, in our relationship that caused us to kind of go our separate ways. So I could sit here and take ownership of that. And I just you could just tell that she just wasn't happy, and which led into just more fights and more fights. And we just felt like it was the best for our children, to just for us to go like our separate ways.
Mhm. Okay. What how how did you at the time, how
Mhm.
did you handle conflict?
It was tough because I could tell that I could you could just tell that it just wasn't going anywhere. You could just tell it just wasn't gonna last. But for me, I couldn't imagine life without my children. Like I couldn't imagine like not tucking them in the bed at night. I mean that was only the reason why I continued why we continued to stay. I just couldn't imagine life without my children. So how the way I handle conflict, it wasn't more of handling anything. We just fought all the
You didn't
time.
really know
We
how
didn't
to
know how
handle.
to. We didn't really know how to. And then I think once when your daughters start to cover their ears because of screaming and fighting, that's when you know it's not about us anymore. It's about the kids, and we just have
Mm.
to make the best decision for our kids.
Was there any role models that you looked up to at the time, or did you have a role model for for to have a family, or um basically to handle, I guess, a relationship, or be in a relationship? Did you have
At the time, no.
at the
Just
time?
at the time, no, because my dad was kind of he was me and my dad. We didn't really, man. There was like a good few years to where we didn't talk. Not that anything happened between us. It was just I was just doing my own thing, raising my own family. And I didn't realize how much I kinda distanced myself from my own family, just trying to raise my own family. And obviously, we would meet up here and there for, like, family functions and stuff, but I didn't really have that guidance at the time.
Yeah, okay. And who decides
Mhm,
how did the conversation go when you decide to it's best to split ways?
mhm. I mean, it was both of us just because
Both, okay.
yeah, it was both of us. For for her, I knew that she I mean, you for her, I just knew that you could feel it, like, kinda in the room, just like, just the she just wasn't happy anymore, so and again, I knew that I contributed to that, so I just thought we thought it was just better. At that point, it wasn't about us anymore. It was
Mhm.
just more about our children, and I knew, and I remember telling her that you deserve happiness, and I want you to be happy. I mean, at the end of the day, like we can hate each other all we want. Like you're still the mother of my kids, and I want you to be happy. And now she's married, and she's happily married, and my kids have a great stepdad, and so I'm happy for her.
Yeah, so at the time, where do you go next?
At the time, I ended up staying with my mom for about a couple of months, and then I ended up getting my own place. And at that time, that's when really I started, kind of going through like things as far as like adversity, just because I'm living by myself, and I was kind of going through things to where like I just didn't really. When you go from a relationship to where you have like double income, and then she took care of all the finances and everything, I didn't really like kind of have that experience, of what she did. So I kind of had to learn everything. And um yeah, it was kind of tough because at that time I had lost my job, and I just moved into this place. So I was like almost freaking out, like how am I going to pay my rent and everything. And I went through a really tough time. And by this time, this is kind of like ending of 2017, going into 2018, and no job, didn't really have friends to talk to. My family kind of was doing their own thing, so I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I will never forget as I'm kinda going through this and just not knowing what I was gonna do, and I'm freaking out, and I'm panicking, and I'm just having all these negative thoughts in my head, literally about to give up on myself. And I will never forget my oldest daughter at the time. She's 7. She calls me one day, and she hears her mom talk and hearing that, like I'm not working and everything, that I'm stressed out. And she was like, "Dad, I hear that you don't have money. Do you not have money right now? Like, are you eating? Do you have money to eat? Do you have," just being a kid. And I was like, Don't worry about me, mama. Your dad's gonna be okay." And she's like, "Well, let me call you back. I'm gonna call you right back." And I was like, "No, I want you to talk to me. Don't hang up." She goes, "Well, I'm gonna go see if I can find some money for you so you can eat." And let me tell you something. When she told me that, I literally, and I've told this story to plenty of people before. I hung up the phone, literally went into my bathroom mirror and I looked at myself, started crying, and I literally told myself, "Dude, you need to man up. You need to like stop feeling sorry for yourself. This is life." And the adversity that you talked about, this is now the adversity that you're going through, to where you don't have that relationship anymore. This Your kids need you. If your kid is over here calling telling you that, so that's when I started to, looking for jobs and everything, and I started just at the time I started driving for like Lyft, which is something I was doing just to kind of get some income coming through. And then when you start focusing on yourself and when you block out negativity and everything and just block out stuff that you can't control, then the dominoes will start to fall. And then I ended up getting a job and was able to get everything on track. And I'm still at that job, been there for 5.5 years now. And everything started to work out. And so I would to be able to look back on that and to be able to say I got through that, it's something I can use as far as like adversity, for to help my children, because it was very tough because I was just going through like a lot of personal stuff at the time.
So I listened to some of your videos,
Hmm.
and you mentioned you've had anxiety.
Hmm.
Did you experience anxiety at the time?
At the time, yes, just because I was when because I
Like,
over.
or how, since when do you remember experiencing anxiety,
Mhm.
and what did that look like for you?
Anxiety, at the time because I was over racking my brain as far as trying to figure out every solution. What am I like finding a job and then being a father to my children and just everything else that was I was getting behind on my car payment. I think my electric bill had got turned off. There was just so much things that I was going through and it was overwhelming and I didn't know what I was going to do. So at one point I even considered suicide. I was just wasn't really thinking clearly. And I would come home from trying to find jobs to like eviction notices on my door. And so obviously that's giving me more anxiety because I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do here. My credit's probably gonna get all screwed up if I get evicted from here. And so and I didn't really have guidance at the time. And I just kind of just took it one day at a time. That's really all you could do. And I would pray about it, just take it one day at a time. And I never check my personal email. I don't know why I have an email, but I never check it. Even if you check it right now, I got like maybe like million unread emails. But for some reason, on a specific day, I checked it, and it was a job interview or a job fair at a Sheraton hotel in Dallas, and I went, and sure enough, it was a job that I got right on the spot, right then and there. So talk about God working in mysterious ways. I was meant to check my email that day. So yeah, I mean, just.
And so when you're in your room with all these things just compounding
Hmm.
on you, all
Hmm.
these big things,
Hmm.
right, that are life changing, such as your credit score,
Right.
you're aware that's going to affect you,
Mhm.
and you open the door, you go in. How do you what do you do? How do you handle it? Like, what are you doing at the time?
At the time, I
Like,
think it's very important when you're going through overwhelming stuff like that that can cause you severe anxiety. It's very important to calm yourself, just to calm down, just because your mind's going in so
mhm,
different ways. I In the video that I made recently was motivational video. I talked about when overthinking,
mhm,
and I compared it to quicksand. So if you're standing in quicksand, if you're struggling, you only sink deeper. As far as if you stand still, you kinda, like, level out, and maybe there's things that you can grab on to kind of will yourself out. It's the same thing when you're overthinking, your mind's going in so many different ways, and so you're only causing yourself more anxiety, and that's why I always tell people it's very important to surround yourself with people that like a support system, because you need if you're going through something right now, like if you're overwhelming yourself, like, you're trying to balance like your marriage, you're trying to balance your podcast, you're trying to balance being a parent, so much going on. And I could sit here and like, Myra, take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay. Stay positive. Think about all the good things that you have. Think about your health. Start with that. Think about the things that you are blessed for. Take a deep breath. What is what is the one thing that you can control like right now? Because all the other stuff you can't control that. I couldn't control that I was getting eviction notices. I couldn't control that I was, you know, not having a job at the time. Mind you, this is end of 2017 going to 2018. I couldn't control any of that. But once when I started to take it step by step, okay, you can control this. Okay, now that you got that under control, move on to the next thing. Okay, control that. So when you start focusing on the little things that you can control, everything else will start to flow. It's inevitable. Like that's just how the way life works. But if you're distracted by the wrong things, then everything will just go downhill for you. So I was overthinking so much. But when you just calm yourself and just remind yourself, okay, these are the things that you can control. And these are things I actually relate to now to people, and I try to help them out with that.
So at the time, you have to calm down
Hmm.
your head at the time. How
Right.
how did you learn that, or where did you get that from, or how did that wisdom get into you where you knew you had to calm down?
Um, and I think I still have it too because I kept it with me. So at the time, I'm staying in contact with my apartment manager. Like, hey, like I remember her name. Her name's Maria. I was like, hey, Maria, like I'm sorry. Like I know I'm going on like another week of being late. I'm trying here. Like I'm trying. Just please don't evict me, please. And obviously, being the sweet lady that she was, she's like, I remember telling me like, Chris, I'm trying to help you out, but there's only so much I can do before I get in trouble. And so I remember going out one day looking for jobs, and I come home one day, and obviously her having to do her job, they have to leave those notices on your door. But then right next to one of the notice, there was a sticky note, and she wrote on there, "Hey Chris, everything's gonna be okay." She wrote that, and she left it on there, and she wrote it on a green sticky note. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is God's way of telling me everything's gonna be okay. Just trust the process. Just have patience, have faith, focus on the little things. Everything's gonna be okay. And I remember I kept that sticky note on, and I ended up living there for like 4 more years after that, and I never took that sticky note off. And so that way it reminds me every day that everything's gonna be okay. So those were things that I kind of you have to remind yourself, whether if it's a sticky note or putting it on your wallpaper on your phone, and just remind yourself, especially when you have a lot going on in your life. You balancing parenting, balancing your business or whatever it is, to um it's very important just to kind of take a deep breath and just kind of realize, and also apply that to people who work a lot. And I'm very, very big on, if you're working hard all the time, it's okay to take a day off. It's okay to take a day off. Like if you work a Monday through Friday job, take a day off on a Friday before the weekend, or take it off on a Monday after the weekend, so you get that 3 day. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's a reset for your brain. It's a reset for your mental. It's a reset for just to kind of get your mind on track. Because if you're just on the go, 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 which there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you have goals, and if you're driven, like, oh, nothing's gonna stop me. I get that, and that's okay. But you need to have like a moment, like a day to yourself, just to reset and to focus. Go get your nails done. Go to a movie by yourself. Just take care of yourself. Have a time to yourself. I'm very big on that, and people who know me very well know that I amplify that a lot.
So at the time when you're going through all these moments,
Mhm,
what's your what you get this sticky note
mhm,
that brings almost like hope.
mhm,
Um, you go into your room. Other than that, what's your outlet to kind that like you mentioned the quicksand.
mhm.
And if you stay still and just kind of start pulling from those things, like what was those things that you were pulling yourself up from? Was it prayer? Was it like, you know what I mean, before you actually now land
Mhm.
a job that helps you get back up on your feet?
Well, you said it, the first thing you said, definitely a prayer, because I prayed about it.
Mm.
And I remember one day, I had my kids for like a couple of hours because I just wanted to be around them. I took them home. As I'm driving back, I'm literally telling myself, driving in silence, Everything's gonna be okay. I don't know how it's gonna be okay, but everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be good. I know it. I can feel it. Everything's gonna be okay. With a lot of prayer and just with the sticky note and everything, like just with the hope. And then the very next day,
Mm.
checking the email. And so I go and then I get the job right on the spot. And I was able to buy just a little bit more because obviously when you get a job, it takes a while to kind of get that big first check in. So it was literally like a struggle of a grind at that time. So it was definitely prayer and it was definitely just reminding myself that everything's gonna be okay. You can't you can't give up on yourself. I know when things are hard, whether if it's like losing a loved one or if you're just going through finances or if you're going through separation, times are it's gonna be hard. And take all the time you need to process it. It's okay. But at some point, like you need to stay strong for yourself, if not for yourself, for your kids or for, whoever, who loves you in life. So you have to be calm. But definitely a prayer. For me, prayer helps. And I'm very big on prayer. Like I have so many tattoos of crosses and on my body, and I just have quotes from like the Bible, like patience and faith that I have tattooed on me because these are things that I went through and just trust the process. Like there's always a way. There's always a way.
Yeah, yeah. And do you have any role model or anyone you look up to at the time?
Mhm.
At the time, right? Is there any people you look up to and you're looking at, or maybe even reaching out for advice at the time?
At the time, no. At the time, no. And it's funny because as I mentioned, me and my dad, we didn't talk for years. And again, it wasn't that nothing happened to us. It was just that we just I guess we're just doing our own separate thing. Now he's my role model. Now he's my role model. And we'll get into that in a second. But at the time, no, I didn't really have anything just because I was more focused on trying just getting my own stuff together and I just wasn't utilizing my resources. It's
Mm,
funny because when I told my dad the story now, because again, this was what 2017 going into 2018. This all started in November of 2017 going into 2018. When I tell him the story now, he says, "Why didn't you call me? I could have loaned you the money for all that you needed." Because I was like what almost like $1,300 behind in debt at the time. I could have loaned you the money, and so I just didn't think to call you. We just didn't really talk, So
why do you think you didn't reach out to him, or utilizing your resources and just kind of kept it almost to yourself?
you know,
It sounds like at the time.
At the time, honestly, it's kind of a tough question to ask because I think honestly, I was kind of really reserved. I didn't really talk to anybody about my problems,
Mm,
and my brother and my sister can tell you that I was kind of very quiet. They would say that yeah, Chris never really talked to the family as much, and not that there was animosity or anything like that. It was just I was just I don't know. I guess I was just on my own island, just
mm,
doing my own, just doing me, and not realizing how much I needed my family.
mm.
So that's
And it never crossed your
It never crossed
mind.
my mind. It never crossed my mind, and even going into 2018, I was kind of everything 2018 was good, like, everything was back on track, like, I was good, I was happy for the first time in a very long time, and, I'm, just getting back to, like, dating again, and I'm just, just living my life, and everything's great, and then I started to find my family again,
Mm.
with my mom and everything, and
It's interesting how your life starts turning around,
Mhm,
and now you think about like it sounds like you were in survival mode.
mhm,
Like you didn't have time really to think about, you didn't even see the tools in front of
right,
you because you were so consumed
right,
in surviving,
mhm.
and maybe at the time your daughters, right?
Right.
And I'm sure the breakup, even though it was mutual, it
Mhm.
wasn't easy. I
Right.
mean, you have to, for one, I mean, you're with this person and now you're not,
Mhm.
and then your daughter's on top of that, and
Right.
now you're not sleeping with them,
Right, right.
and on top of all these issues or all these life problems compounding, such as job and such,
Mhm.
making ends meet and paying your bills, and then everything turns around, and now now you have time to breathe and reconnect.
Right.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So you reach back out and you're reconnecting and things are going good.
Mhm.
And where is your next life bump? What
Um,
happens after?
Next life bump would be, I would definitely have to say, let's see, it was 2018. It would definitely have to say like 2019. You know, I was definitely kind of going through. It's funny though because I kind of.
Or let me take a step back.
Mhm.
Your everything's turning around. Every life is it's you're breathing. You're dating.
Mhm.
Um, do you make goals? Do you have new goals now that you're maybe inspired?
Even then, Myra, like I didn't, and that's the thing. I didn't really have like a goal in mind, and that's I
Mm,
I really didn't have like a goal in mind. It was still
okay.
more of just work, work. When I think about it now, like I was like, man, I felt like a bum just because I was like, how is it that I'm like what at the time I'm like what 33, 34, and I don't have a plan in life. I'm just
But nobody taught you this, right? It
right.
sounds like, I mean, it didn't, or did somebody tell you, "Hey, do this?" It sounds like you just didn't know to have a plan.
Right. Well, no,
Eh,
my dad and my mom would always just tell me, you know, like do what you like, do what makes you happy. But I never really put thought into it. It was just more on, I was just more like an autopilot, just same
mm,
thing, different day, like just work, 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 and I'm just working, and I just didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted in life.
okay, so where did that take you?
So 2019, still just kind of living my life, and you know,
You mentioned you started dating.
yeah, I'm dating again, and everything's going good. November of 2019, my grandmother, who was the second person I was close to, other than my mom, she ended up passing away
Mm,
due to kidney failure. So that really took a toll on the family. It definitely took a toll on my mom and on my uncle, just because my grandfather had passed away back in '96. So she was already sick. So she was in a nursing home, and it was already hard to see her the way that she was. Like she was dying. But we just had confidence that she was gonna be okay, because when we would go see her, she was always so uplifting, always smiling and always laughing and everything. So when we had got that call that she had passed away, it was very difficult, especially for my mom, just because my mom took it really, really hard. And I was worried just because I didn't know, I didn't know if she was gonna be okay. But at the time she was dating someone, so I kind of just left it, up to him to take care of her. And so that kind of took a toll on me. And uh, so at that time, then because I was like really, really fit at the time. Like I was, I mentioned that, I'm happy and everything, everything's going good. And, like I'm, fit, working out and everything. And then I started gaining weight, and I started gaining it really fast. I think a lot of it had to do with happy weight, just because of, the relationship that I was in. And then my uncle gets diagnosed with kidney failure. And so we realized that it's hereditary in the family. Diabetes is hereditary in the family, and that's what caused it.
mm,
So when we found out in the summer of 2020 that he had kidney failure, then that's when it really started to really kind of take a toll. Because other than my mom, my grandmother, and then my uncle was like the third person that was closest to. So his illness started to really deteriorate like throughout the year. So he was in stage 2 kidney failure by beginning of 2021. I want to say he was in stage 3 or stage 4. So at this time he's needing to start dialysis. So it was then told to us that if he doesn't get a kidney, then he's not going to make it. So at the time I'm talking about, I was literally at 216 pounds. That by 2021, because I weighed myself February 1st of 2021. I'm at 267. So I'm like huge. So I wanted to take
2021.
so I gained a significant amount of weight. So it was definitely due to happy weight, just because when you get in a relationship, you're happy, and then just a mixture of just not eating out all the time. I just wasn't really taking care of myself. But I told myself I want to be the one to save my uncle's life. I want to donate my kidney, and I'm going to do this.
Mm,
So I knew I started going to doctor's visits, and they told me, okay, well, in order for you to do this, there's a weight requirement. You have to be 220 or under. So I'm 267 and I need to be at 220. I have a long way to go. So I have a long way to go to lose his weight, but my uncle doesn't really have that time. He's getting sicker, and each time that we saw him, he looked skinnier. He he just looked worse, and it was like a ticking time bomb. We just didn't know if he was going to make it. So I start to lose the weight, and I'm starting to kind of do things to trying to like get on a diet and everything. And meanwhile, like I'm still trying to manage like my like relationship and everything and being there for my kids. But it was very difficult because I've never had to lose weight before. I've always been like fit my whole life. And so I never had to lose weight. So I didn't really know how to do it other than okay, just cardio, just trying to eat well. So it was a challenge. The problem is that I wasn't losing it, like, fast enough. I just didn't know what I was doing wrong. So, amongst all of that, I'm doing all the doctor's appointments, blood work. There's so much blood work that had to be done, so much, like, urine test that had to be done. And so, fast forward going into 2022, January 5th, which was my birthday. So, all the lab work comes back, and I ended up becoming a match for my uncle. So now it's okay, so now he has a match. So now we have a kidney that we can give to him. I remember my aunt, which is my uncle's wife, had told me that before all this, he was on the donors list, and the doctors were very honest with them, like you have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting a kidney. So it was one of those things to where my uncle he kind of just accepted that he just wasn't going to make it. And every time when I heard that, and every time when I see how sick he was, and every time when I'll call him to check on him, and I would just hear how bad he sounded, it only made me wanted to work harder. And when I found out it was a match, then but I was still at that point, I was at 245 pounds, so I was making progress, but I still had a long way to go. But by this time, he's already in stage 5. So now he's in stage 5 now.
Mm.
So now he went from having to do dialysis, like, I wanna say it was, like, once a week, so then he ended up having to do it every other day to where now he's having to do it every day, because without the dialysis, he's not gonna make it. So he's still sick, and I still have a long way to go. So then I was thinking, well, what can I do next? Like, I need to do this faster. Mind you, all of this was making me so crazy up here because I have my family, not that they were intentionally doing this, but obviously with me being a match, like, okay, you're the hope. You're the hope that we have. So they would be like, okay, so how much weight have you lost? How much weight you've lost? Okay, well, I'm working on it. Let me just I'll call. We're taking it day by day, just so that's that. And then trying to lose the weight, and I'm getting irritated because I'm not seeing results fast enough. And then just balancing work and just balancing my family at the time, it was very, very overwhelming for me. And I realized that it was causing me to be, the biggest asshole, to people and to my family. And I started intermediate fasting to help, and that actually was we could actually see progress little by little. The problem is with fasting is that only added more to me not being the best person to people, because when you're fasting, you're not eating. And it's a more of a mental thing because you're hungry, but then you realize, okay, well, you can't eat because you need to lose weight because you need to save someone's life.
Mm.
So then February in 2022, I have a doctor's appointment, and this was kind of more of the checkup to see, like, okay, if my body is going to be able to handle the surgery. Because when you're donating, it's not like you're changing out parts to a car. This is a human organ that you're about to take out. So you need to make sure that your body's okay to do this. So lab results come back that I'm pre-diabetic. Because again, is hereditary in my family. So my mom was diabetic, so she couldn't do it. My sister was pre-diabetic, my brother. So it was hereditary in my family. The problem was that I was the one that was donating. So they did tell me that if I do this, if I donate my kidney, because you have two, if you donate that one, and if you end up getting a kidney failure, you're screwed because you just have that one. My uncle, the only thing that's really saving him is that one that's, you know, both of them are bad, but one of them is worse than the other. That's the really only thing that's kind of saving them right now. But with me only having one, it's a huge risk. So when they told me that, I was like, okay. So then
Mm.
that was another decision that I needed to make as far as like, okay, do I want to do this? Because if I do this, then probably, my the person I was with was probably gonna have to take care of me for the rest of my life. And do I want that? Do I want her to live that life? Do I want my children to have to see me like this? It added more stress to me. So now I know that there's a risk for me in the future. So then that just adds a whole nother type of stress to me. Meanwhile, how much weight have we lost? How much weight have we lost? So I'm going every day, and it was so mentally exhausting and physically exhausting, and I could feel myself just being the most impatient person. I could feel myself because I was down, putting other people down. I wanted to bring them down with me. I could feel myself just being, an asshole to my kids, to, my family. If I wasn't happy, I didn't want them to be happy
Mm.
because it really took the biggest toll on me. And, there's no excuse. It's not an excuse. I don't want to sit here and say that's an excuse, but it took the biggest toll on me. And so, fast forward, then, there's another separation, and which that one was a little bit more difficult just because it was a bigger family that I had that was involved. And so this one was a little bit harder. By this time, I'm juggling so much. I'm going through a separation, yet still trying to save my uncle's life. You can only imagine the chaos in my mind, in my body. I couldn't sleep for months because while I'm trying to process what I just lost, to okay, I still have to save my uncle's life. I'm still the hope here. Like you can only imagine how much that put on me. So, by this time, or September of 2022, and this is where the diversity comes in, and this is where the whole overthinking and everything comes into play because all of this was all on the table. I knew that I had to do something. You can either be hidden in the dark again, just like how I was 2017, and then my daughter calls me and makes that call to me that it inspires me.
Mhm.
So now you're back to that, but now this is a whole nother chip on your shoulder. This is a whole different ball game. Now you realize that you just affected a lot of people that you loved. You hurt a lot of people that you loved because of how the way you were. And again, because I wasn't happy, I wanted to bring them down with me. And it was I wasn't my best self. And because of that, trying to please other people, put other people's happiness before mine, and I neglected my family. I neglected what I had at hand. So what could I do? I literally told myself, okay, here we are yet again. Everything's gonna be okay, Chris. But it felt different, Myra. This one felt different because here I am, 35, so literally last year. I still didn't have a goal of what I wanted in life. I still didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mm.
I realized that I spent pretty much the last few years of my life pleasing other people and not thinking about myself, focusing on what I couldn't. Now, saving my uncle's life, that was obviously I would do that for anybody. I would do that for anybody. But at the time, the family that I had, I was neglecting them in a way that you can't even imagine, and I was bringing them down with me.
And the family that you were neglecting, who are these people?
Um, it was my fiance and two stepdaughters, and so it was a family that I
Your
met in
fiance and your
mhm,
two stepdaughters.
stepdaughters.
How about your two daughters of your
And then
own?
my two stepdaughters. So it was two stepdaughters, two daughters. So kids of four, pretty
So
much
you
four
were
daughters.
you were neglecting them
hmm
basically,
hmm
and when you say you were wanting to bring other people down? Are these the people that you were trying to bring down, or other people?
It was my family. I just wasn't the best self. I was just, it was just so
Like,
much.
what were you thinking at the time? Like, when you say you wanted, and I say this because, and I'm curious to know because,
Hmm.
I think even on the video a motivational video that you posted, you said, if there's anybody that like, uh well, I probably won't say it exactly how you said it, but it was something along the lines to, if you need to get away from people that are hurting you,
Hmm.
that it's okay to do that.
Hmm.
So, it sounds like at the time maybe you were hurting the people around you.
Hmm.
How, like, what were you doing?
Yeah. The best way I can compare it is if you're an alcoholic and if you're someone who suffers with just drinking a lot, and then if you come home to a family, you're affecting those who you love.
Okay.
If you're someone who's addicted to drugs, whatever, and if you have people who love you, you know, you're affecting those who you love. So I mean, it was just a mixture of just I knew that I was not my my best self. I knew that at the time, my fiance, she would be there for me in ways that she could. And
So it sounds like alcohol was involved.
no, alcohol wasn't involved.
No.
It
Okay.
was kind of more just like an example. But it's like I was more of focusing on other things that I really just couldn't control and
What
of
were those
neglecting.
things?
So with my uncle, I was really I really put too much. I really put too much into that. I really neglected really what was at hand, and I know that there were things that I could have done better as far as like certain situations, as far as with with my family. If they ever brought anything up to me, I would just kind of neglect it. I would just care more about my feelings and not theirs, and just not being the best person. And I.
Did you feel like that they had to did you feel, because you mentioned you wanted to kind of bring people down as
Mhm.
well. Did you feel like they should be going through those pains like with you? You wanted them to kind of do it, have those pains with you together,
I wouldn't.
or how so?
I wouldn't say that I wanted them to have those same pains with me. It was just kind of more like I need y'all to understand what I'm going through, so just deal with it. Y'all have to deal with it. Like,
Okay.
just deal with it. Like whether if you like it or not. And then it was I know mentally for them it was not okay,
Did
and
they
that
try
wasn't okay.
talking to you about it?
Yes, I know my fiance did. I know she tried to talk to me about it, and she would try to tell me of how the way she felt about it, of how the way it would make her feel. You know, 'Cause like I said, I just was not my best self. Pretty much that was my whole thing, just deal with it. Either you like it or you don't. You leave
Okay.
if you don't like it. And it was more of
So you would
like a
say that leave if you don't like it.
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
just kinda more of like, and it wasn't the right approach, and I was just going through so much. It was just so overwhelming, and if there was any ways that I could there were times where I really thought to myself, like, "Man, I wish I would have never done this," just because it really took a toll. It really took a huge toll on my family. It took a huge toll on me mentally. It took a huge toll on me physically, emotionally. I've never been through anything like that. The amount of stress, the amount of emotional stress,
Pressure. It sounds like there's a lot of
it was
pressure.
definitely pressure because you got to think like now I went from like okay, I gotta my uncle's dying, I gotta lose the weight, then to finding out that you're pre-diabetic, so now it's a possibility that you may be this in the future. So there were so many things I had to think of, like, I could be in the same situation. My kids need me, and I didn't care. I didn't care. It's like, okay, I got to do this. I don't. I got to do this. Y'all do with it. I don't care. And
Yeah.
it was and like not going into details, but like it was just so much. There was things that I said that I could have said handled better.
Mhm.
Things that I've done that I definitely could have handled better. But when someone is pretty much tapped out, they're tapped out, and they can't really do much anymore. Um, by the time I realized it and I tried to save it, it was just too late. But you can't really blame anybody who's going through that. So then fast forward, I'm trying to process everything that just happened, and even then I was still trying to I, it seemed like I was trying to put blame on other people, like, well, I was going through this, like you know, you need to like understand like what I was going through. But then I realized, like, you know what? Nobody's responsible. Like I make the choices and I'm responsible for my choices. I'm responsible for my mistakes. So I needed to figure out what I needed to do because again, I if you think from what all I just lost to what all that I still have to do, it was even then it was a lot because now I'm back to square one. It's just me, myself, and I. And at the time, like I knew my kids, like I needed to be there for my kids, and my kids were actually there for me more just because now they're older, and you know they're helping me through this situation, and you know
Yeah.
and then that's where me and my dad get close again, and that's where my dad played a huge role into where I am now because I needed a place to stay for a while. It's when I got my place again, and obviously he let me stay with him and his girlfriend, and so I put a lot of blame on myself for everything. My dad, as I mentioned earlier, you know, a huge role model. My dad will be the first one to tell you that he's made a lot of mistakes in his life. He could sit here on this camera and he can go on for days about mistakes that he made in his life. But how the way he overcame the adversity and how the way he owned up to everything and to see the man, the father that he is to his children and the advice that he was able to give me.
Mm.
And as far as, just taking accountability and things that you could do for your life. And he gave me a place to stay at the time and didn't charge me for rent at all because he knew I needed to save for money to get a place and everything. And he really did help me. And then once when I finally did get my own place, then that's where reality started to sink in. Okay, now I'm back to square one. So what do I do? I was still, going through just processing separation while also still trying to figure out if I even wanted to do this kidney thing anymore. Like I didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore because I knew this is what kind of like caused everything, and I just wasn't my best self at all. So I get a call one day from one of the doctors, and they're telling me that because there was something wrong. I can't remember the word. It was like a medical term, but they kept on saying because I had to go through so much time had went by from the last time I had did the blood work, so I had to do it over again. Um, so I had to do it over again, but they kept on telling me that something was wrong, like something just wasn't looking right. And I wish I knew the answer to it, but they basically just told me that I just wouldn't be able to donate just because of I wouldn't be able to donate because basically with the pre-diabetes, it was something that they couldn't do on their end, just allow me to move forward. But there, I can't remember. It was something along with one of the testing. So um, I wasn't able to do it, but I was already kind of leaning towards, just not being able to. I just didn't know if I wanted to anymore. Um, so I felt like okay, well, that was like one less thing to worry about.
Right. A choice that
Hmm.
you didn't really have to make.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So then,
Anymore.
right. So then came the part to where like, okay, now I got to fix myself.
Mm.
Now I have to fix myself. So then this is where the real work starts.
Okay.
So again, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. My family's all over town. My brother moved to San Antonio. Um, my aunt who lives in uh Oregon, she's actually goes to school for psychology, but I would talk to her about it a couple of times, but she's going to school, she's raising a family. I didn't want to bother her about it. My mom, um, at things got worse because then my mom got diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer.
Mm.
So that was literally a couple of months right after. So other than checking up on her, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. So I'm over here dealing with this by myself, realizing those that have affected and how do I fix this? So I started from scratch. I started journaling, started writing down things about me that I could have handled better
Mm.
and took accountability and I worked on it. worked on it, and once when I
How did you work on it?
for starters, forgiveness. You got to forgive yourself before you can. You have to before you even start putting in the work on anything. Step number one is forgive yourself, because if you continue life with blaming yourself, you're not going to be able to move forward in life. You have to forgive yourself, because God's going to forgive you regardless. Doesn't matter what you've done. You have to forgive yourself, and it took me a lot to struggle with that, Myra. Honestly, because just when I felt like I was getting better, I would revert to a situation where I was like, man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Man, I wish I could have. And then I would just kind of just think back, and then I would just sit back down again, put my hands in my face, and just like, oh my gosh, Chris, what did you do? But I could do that all day if I need a. You have to forgive yourself, and you have to understand that everything happens for a reason. So once when I was able to slowly but surely kind of master that, okay, then write it down. I wrote down examples of things that I could have done better. I
Mm.
had to write down literally examples. Okay, these are things I definitely could have done better. These are definitely things I could have handled, because I affected a lot of people that I loved, and you know um once when I was able to do that, and then I started to see myself become slowly but surely better. So then I'm back in the gym, and now I'm like really losing the weight, and I'm below that 220 threshold now. Right now I'm like at 211 pounds. So I knew
Congratulations.
patience, yeah, patience. And once when you block out, because I was still trying to focus on things that I couldn't control. I was trying to, fix things. I was trying to mend things that I really couldn't control. And so once when I realized, like, okay, this stuff's not helping me. You need to stop. You need to accept everything for what it is, and just move on in life. You have to move forward. You can't you can't think about what it is that you've done wrong. Like, you have to, yes, think about it so that way it doesn't happen again, but acknowledge it and just move forward in your life. You can't control that if people gave up on you. You can't control if people don't want to talk to you anymore. You can't control, if people think that you're the worst person in the world. You can't do that. You can't control that, because you know who you are. God knows who you are, and the people around you know who you are. So,
You mentioned journaling.
mhm.
Where did you get that idea from?
I actually got that idea from YouTube. I actually got that from YouTube. I was YouTubing, researching how to deal with emotional stress, because I was going through a lot. Like, I didn't have a therapist. I couldn't afford it. I didn't have people to talk to get through that. I didn't have that.
Mm.
Like I said, I had my dad to talk to, and I had family, but I didn't want to bother them about this all the time, because they have their own families that they're doing. They have their own lives that they're doing. And that was another thing too I realized about this. You can't really bother these people with it. This is something you got to figure out on your own. So journaling was one thing I learned that you could do, and then a coworker at work just told me, like, hey, look, you could try journaling. Try journaling before you go out and like try to like vent to somebody that it's probably not a good idea to do, because it's you don't want to like cause issues or cause drama or anything. Journaling actually really helped a lot, because I would do like a journaling date, like on this date, and then someone told me though not only to journal about the bad days, but journal about the good days as well, because that also helps. You want to journal about your good days. So journaling also really did help, and also being in the gym, just having that mindset, like just just focus on you. Because again, and this goes back to when you focus on you, and when you know who you are, everything will start to fall into place. The dominoes will fall, and I think ultimately that's where things started to kind of get better, and but at the same time, I'm still now had to deal with my mom having cancer. And mind you, my mom, she's my rock. She's everything. And like I said, this goes back to when she used to carry me with one hand and groceries in the other hand.
Mhm.
So while also still dealing with my uncle having kidney failure. So it was still battling that, and I couldn't really I can't control their health. I could pray about it, call them and just check on them, but I'm
Yeah.
also still dealing with trying to fix myself as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that one of the things that I've learned throughout time,
Mhm.
um, is that habits compound. So when you talk about domino effect,
Hmm.
it works both ways,
Right.
right? So, and from me listening to your story, you have, and life is about like hills and valleys,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Right.
and so basically it's when things start taking a turn is when the moments you decided to
Hmm.
say, like, this is it, things are going to happen, things are going to
Right.
be good, right?
Hmm.
You decided that. And then you talk about the domino effect, which the way I see it, it's like habits. You
Right.
start changing what you do every day. You're
Right.
not doing what you're doing, what you did yesterday. You say, I have to change. This has to change, and then you start getting hope, and things start falling into place.
Right.
And then it sounds like you know life happens, and it's almost like it works same way, right? The habits, the domino effect. One bad thing happens, and then more bad things start happening, but
Right.
it's because of that mindset. It kind of like shatters
Hmm.
your foundation,
Right. Right.
and you kind of go back to your old self
Right.
because
Exactly.
that's who you that's what that's what your not only your mind is what your body knows. So you start doing things maybe you did before, and then you and but now it sounds like you're starting to realize, okay, I've been there before, like you just
Right.
said, back to square one.
Back to
Like
school.
back, like that back, it's like, okay, I know this, I've been here,
Hmm.
right? And then you start, okay, and you start researching, okay, how to what to do, and you start journaling,
Right.
and then you start journaling. That's again, you start changing those
Hmm.
habits,
Right.
right? And
Hmm.
then you're like, okay, well, I have to figure this out. At the end of the day that you have to figure it out, and you
Right.
start taking, you know that you have to take ownership
Hmm.
and responsibility. And so when you talk about that domino effect, I can't think but habits,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So good habits compound,
Hmm.
bad habits
Right.
compound.
Right.
And so, we can only think one thing at a time. We have
Right.
many thoughts,
Hmm.
right? But that's because of time, right?
Right.
So we have so many thoughts, but we can only think one thing at a time.
Right. Right.
So what is it that
Hmm.
you are going to think, right?
Hmm.
And then it's all like a cycle, right? Because you think that, and then that might lead to another
Right.
positive thought. And when you write things down, I am such a big fan of writing
Hmm.
stuff down,
Right.
um, anything and everything,
Right.
and for multiple reasons. But one of the biggest thing is that you get to basically kind of dump what's in here
Hmm.
to allow more to come in.
Right.
And not only that, you also slow down your mind,
Hmm.
because now you have to slow down to write
Right.
or type whatever it is that you do. But at the end of the day, you are transferring this to here,
Right.
and as you're typing, your mind also starts thinking of other things.
Right.
So if you're like, okay, well, this is what I'm going through. How do I? Okay, let me think of other good things or bad, or think about what happened, and now how do I fix it?
Right.
So then ideas start popping up, but that's because you can only think one thing at a time. So when you're dumping it,
Hmm.
you're allowing
Right.
new ideas,
Mhm.
and so that's what it sounds like, and that's kind of what I'm getting out of it. And it's hard when you don't know how to plan if
Right.
you've never planned.
Right. It's definitely hard if you don't know how to plan it, especially if you didn't know what you want. I want to say, like, during the journaling really helped. Forgiving yourself really helped. Obviously, prayer is obviously the number one thing. But also, I knew I had to. I was like, "What do you want, Chris? What do you want? Did you even have a plan? I never even had a plan when I was in the relationship. I didn't have a plan. I didn't. I was just taking it day by day. Like, here, this is what I'm gonna do. Deal with it, and like, trust me, like, I thought to myself, if there was a button I could push just to kind of read back and do everything, I could. But there is no button. There is something that I can do is create something new,
Yes.
which is a new version of myself,
Yes.
which is create a new journey.
Yes.
Now, my mistakes don't define me, Myra.
No?
Nobody makes everybody makes mistakes in life. Everybody at one point was a probably messed up person for whatever reason. Um, but if you can one day just say, I messed up. I messed up. I've been on camera twice, with it being the second time, to own up to things that I've messed up. And I share that with the world to let them know, if you if whatever it is that you've done in life, whether if it was, I don't know, like you sabotaged something or murdered somebody or whatever, like you have to you have to forgive yourself. You can't continue to beat yourself down. And you definitely cannot allow other people to continue to beat you down. If people keep on just reminding you of your failures, or people keep on putting you down, it's not healthy for you. Like, you have to acknowledge it and your plan. So my plan was, okay, I want to I've always wanted to be a YouTuber. I mentioned it. You talk about it, but you don't ever take action. And that's, one thing I always did. I talk about it, but I never do anything about it. For the first time in my life, I wanted to do it. I'm going to start my YouTube channel, and I'm going to utilize my journey to help other people. So I help people with fitness. I do put it out there that I'm not a licensed coach or anything, but I know a lot about fitness, of how to, now I know how to lose weight, and, I know how to put on muscle, whatever. So I did a YouTube video about that. But then I wanted to mix up my content with speaking, with helping people with, just with anxiety, and just with helping people with mental health. And one thing for me is, I love helping people. I love helping people who are dealing with stuff. I always try to get them to be positive. Always, like I was explaining earlier, count your blessings first. It could be a lot worse where you could be at. You could be not having a job, you could be not healthy, whatever. Count your blessings first. Know that God will not put you through anything that you can't handle. And, in February, I literally had 4 days back to back of bad things that happened to me, 4 days in a row. On the first day, I had got for whatever reason, it was, my lecture bill was like $400, and I was like, "What the heck?" And obviously, being on the phone fighting with them didn't help, so I had to drop $400 of money that I didn't have, and that kind of put me in a little struggle. Day two, I ended up getting a ticket on the way to work due to speeding. Day three, in my apartments, we have like little residential stickers on our windshield for the apartments, and I didn't realize it was expired. So they ended up towing my car that night, and I ended up having to pay $300 to get it out. That was on day three. And then day four, when I was trying to go get the ticket dismissed, because it was a dismissal ticket, there was an error that was made, and I ended up having to pay like another like $200. So I was basically 4 straight days where I was going, just having a bad day, and I was like, can anything get worse? It was horrible. But again, those are things that God will put you through, that, so to see if you can get through it. And I was able to get through it. And you know what I did, my each of one of those single days, when the day was over, I would tell myself, what a day. And I would smile, and I would pray. I was like, you know what? But it could be worse. I have my children, I have my job, and I still have, I still have hope in my life.
Yes.
And
Well, you mentioned forgiving yourself,
mhm,
and one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about forgetting, yourself or even anybody, right? Like, I listened to this one example
mhm,
that gave me perspective, which
mhm,
is because I feel like all of us at some point we beat ourselves up for something we did in the past,
mhm,
which at the end of the day, that it's you either see it as a failure, or you see it as a, hey, I messed up because I didn't there was something in my blind spot that I
right,
didn't see.
exactly.
So there's a lesson there to be learned,
Mhm,
because if there was no lesson to be learned, I wouldn't have made that
right.
mistake.
If you're not making mistakes, then you're not learning, pretty much.
So, and well, that's I feel like that's the way we learn,
Right.
right? Through the mistakes, because we're born with a powerful tool, which is our brain,
Mhm,
but it's like a computer, right? It's blank.
right.
when you're born. So depending on what you feed it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the machine you're building,
Right. Right.
right? So if you if you did something where you didn't get the outcome that you didn't want, it's because you messed up.
Right.
You just
Exactly.
messed up.
Right.
And it's not about having blame or I'm not good or no. It just means it's okay.
Right.
Everybody messes up. But the thing is, why did you mess up?
Mm-hmm.
What was it that I did, and how to okay, now I know.
Right.
That's what I did. This is what I could have done better. All right, I'm not doing that again. Now if you do that again
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over, now okay, now we have a different problem.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
100%.
But if you take the lesson, but what I was getting to with forgiving yourself was, if somebody commits a crime
Mm-hmm.
and they go to jail,
Mm-hmm.
say they serve their time, would you think it's fair for some, and they get out,
Mm-hmm.
right? They serve their time, they get out. Would you think it's fair that whenever somebody had the thought, "Oh, but you did something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me put you back in jail just because I had that thought again." No, you've already served your time,
Right.
right? Or same thing with a dog, right? So, or anything, right? Say you have a pet and your
Mm-hmm.
pet does something that they're not supposed to, and you discipline them. Maybe you put them in the crate or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you do. Would you beat would you beat that dog again over and over every time you had that thought of what they did? No, you did it once
Mm-hmm.
and that's it, right?
Right.
You've disciplined them once, even though that thought keeps coming back. So what we're doing to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
when we have these thoughts and we keep beating ourselves, calling ourselves names, maybe we're not good enough. Oh, look at, whatever those intrusive negative thoughts that lead to nowhere,
Right.
they keep coming over and over again. It's a form of you really punishing yourself over and over
Right.
again.
Right.
Like you're already felt the pain.
Right. Right. You bring up you make a really great point. I love the analogy that you made. Like if someone committed a crime
You wouldn't put
and
him back to jail just because
right,
you thought
right,
about it again.
yeah, and you see those who are in jail and then they find God while they're in jail and then they just come back a refurbished man, like a
Yeah,
reborn person,
reborn. Hmm.
and yeah, it would be very, very cruel for you to keep beating them down and remind them of the mistakes that they made because it's only gonna push them back mentally. And that's happened to me as well. I'll get well, this is what you did. And I get reminded of that, and it's not healthy for me mentally because I'm like, okay, I know what I did. I've acknowledged it several times, but if you keep on bringing that, it only sets me back mentally.
Right.
I need your help to well, not that I need your help because did it myself, but I need your help to not bring that back there. And I know again, if it's conversation with those that you've affected, obviously you can't expect them to forget that overnight. But try to you not only do I need to forgive myself, but I mean forgiveness should be given as well. I mean it's totally up to them, but I don't think it's right to keep on beating them down, reminding them of their failures.
Well, it's not constructive,
Hmm. Right.
right? So, and it helps when you have a plan.
Hmm.
When you say, "This is what I'm gonna do now.
Right.
This is where I'm going. This is the past." And like you said, the past doesn't define you, no, but it's built you who you are today, and
Right.
it's your job to say, "Hey, I'm gonna take that experience,
Right.
turn it around, and help others."
Right.
Right? Because now if your life was different, if you didn't go through the struggles you went through, you may not be able to help other people in the same way because you didn't go through that. So how are you
Right.
going to help them
Hmm.
fully anyways?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, now that you've gone through these experiences, now so if somebody's going through that,
Hmm.
or even what to post, like how are you going to give advice, say you do your videos and you have no guest,
Right.
like you wouldn't know what to say because you haven't been through that.
Right.
But because you have,
Hmm.
and because you've worked through it and you're working through it, and we're always, it doesn't matter how old you are.
Right,
Every
right.
like our brain,
Mhm.
it you, as long as it can taking information and education, you can continue educating it
Right,
for as long as your brain no longer works.
right. And whenever, so like how to touch back on what you said, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. I'm very, very big on that. Focusing on what you can control is also big for me. It's all about elevation. One thing that I realized through all this, Myra, to see where I was literally like 10 months ago to where I am now, I have elevated and I've manifested. I've put in so much work to become the best version of myself. And I tell myself, I wake up every morning and I tell myself, you know what? I'm going to be even better than I was yesterday. Every day we are a work in progress. And I tell people that if you need to put that as a sticky note, on your wallpaper or on whatever, every day we are a work in progress. Each day is an opportunity for us to get better. Don't be satisfied with where you are. Because like you said, if you keep on making those same mistakes, then we're having a different conversation here. For me to write down everything that I was doing wrong and for those that I affected, like that's huge to me. It's personal to me because I probably put these people in a situation to where they'll probably never trust again, you know? And that's very, for me, in my heart, that hurts because that's not the type of damage you want to do to anybody. And especially when it's those who you care about, and especially when it's those who you love. And, it's not, you don't ever want, you don't, I don't ever want to be like that. Now, again, I was going through a lot of stuff. I was going through a lot
Mhm.
of stuff that there's cause and effect. I do believe that with what I was going through really caused me to not be this best person. So, and I mean, it's not an excuse because at the end of the day, like we all have control of what we say and what we do, but in the heat of the moment, sometimes things are said. But I think it's very important that when you're going through these changes, know what you want in your life, forgive yourself. Do not allow people to constantly remind you of your failures. Do not, because you never know. There may be people out there that see you doing good. They see you leveling up. They see you doing good. Like, okay, he's doing good. Like, he's not that person anymore. There may be, what do we call 'em? Haters? That's what we call them. They may be trying to pull you back in. They may be trying to bring you back down. They may trying to distract you, and you cannot allow that you can't allow that distraction to get you because it will set you off. It will set you back mentally.
So it sounds like maybe you have people around you that remind you of what you've done.
I mean, there's people out there that will, try to be like, like, well, hey, this is what you did. How is it that you're changed? And my response is that was 10 months ago. I first off, I mean, it's not like I'm a murderer. It's not like I'm a cheater. It's not like I'm a, physical abuser. Nothing like that. I made mistakes. I've said things. I've done things that you have. If you think for 1 second that I don't think that I could redo that all over again, then you're crazy. You don't know what goes on in here. So yes, when people do remind me of that, there are people who do remind me of that. And it
How do you handle it?
I mean,
Or how are you handling it?
I found myself giving it attention like, well, no, that's not me anymore. That's not me anymore. But then I realized, why am I doing that? Like why? Like I know who I am and I know of the person that I was and I know who the person that I am now. If these people don't care about me enough or love me enough to see the change and to feel it and to just get to know me again, then okay, you have the opportunity just to walk away, and that's how I'm handling it now. Because again, I always cared of how the way I was, people looked at me. I always cared about what people thought about me, and I gave it attention. I would always try to, no, that's not me. That's what I used to be. And you know what? I have a few close friends that tell me, "Don't worry about that. You know how the way you know who you are." My mom, who I talk to almost every day on the way to work, because I always check on her to see how the way she's feeling, and she always reminds me of that. You know who you are. You're a great father. You're a great brother. You're a great friend. Yes, you made mistakes. You've done stuff. You've hurt people. You made mistakes, but that's all of us. It doesn't define you. It's who you are now. And like you said, you nailed it right on the nail. Like if you keep on making those mistakes, then there's something wrong.
So there's three kind of, um, I would say, three types of learning, or three types of people,
Hmm.
or three ways to see lessons. And one of them is, if to not, like, if you want to pursue something,
Hmm.
you research to the best of your ability, and if somebody says, hey, don't do this, um and you don't do it because somebody else went through that,
Right.
and you understand that, and then you don't do that. Okay, well, that's the optimal, right?
Right.
Because you're basically saying, yes, like, I already know where this will take me. I'm not going to do that, right?
Right. Right.
Then there's the second one where it's like, okay, I may know or I may not know,
Right.
but I'm going to experience. But I don't believe you. I think I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. And then they get a lesson, and then maybe they're like, "Oh, okay, but okay, now I know,
Right.
right? And I'm
Right.
not going to do that again."
Right.
And then there's a third kind,
Mhm.
which is a little bit what I was telling you earlier, which is, you do you know you're not supposed to do something because it'll take you where you don't want to go.
Right.
Maybe you try it and you get that result,
Mhm.
but then you keep doing it,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
So it's like, which one are you gonna be? Are you gonna be the one, like, in anything, or who were you, or what are you gonna do, or whatever? It doesn't matter. It's okay. I know I should not do this because it's gonna take me here, or I'm gonna try it anyways. Okay, I learned my lesson, not doing that again.
Right.
Or, yeah, I didn't really learn my lesson. I'm doing the
Right.
same thing over and over again. See,
Right.
there's a difference,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So, and if you continue focusing on what other people think or say or even think of you, the best thing you can do for yourself and for them
Mhm.
is, we all know, like, words mean nothing.
Mhm.
Actions speak louder
Louder than
than words,
words.
right?
Mhm.
Everybody. And in order for actions to happen,
Mhm.
time has to pass.
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
And in order, when that happens, that's way more powerful than any word in the vocabulary, any
Right.
any any word, any phrase, any promises, anything on paper.
Mhm.
That speaks, but it has to take time. And you speak. I saw your motivational video, and
Mhm.
you're big on patience.
Exactly. Patience is key. If you patience and faith, like I said, I have one patience right here, faith right here. It's something that I got during this whole thing that I was going through. At one point, Myra, when I was going through this, new reborn version of myself, I felt like I was trying too hard to try to get people out there to see it. Like I was trying too hard. And what was it doing for me? It was it was actually making things worse.
Mhm.
It was making things worse. So
Because your focus is
right,
not on you. Think
right,
about it.
exactly,
You can only have one thought at a time.
exactly, exactly.
So you thought you were, maybe at the time when you started, like, you thought you were focusing on
Hmm.
yourself, but you were really focusing on what they were thinking.
What they
And
were
think about
thinking.
that. Think about
Exactly.
that. Like, you don't even if you're with your same people that have been married forever, even,
Right.
like, you don't know what's going through your
Mhm.
spouse's
Right.
head, right?
Right.
That's why, uh it doesn't matter how long you've been married. It's not like, "Oh, we no longer argue."
Hmm.
No, why do they argue?
Right.
Because you can't tell, you don't know what the other person is thinking, and
Mhm.
certainly you can't control it.
Right. Right.
And you talk about, do it only what you can control.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're like, if you're trying to control how they think of you, it's like a hamster on a wheel. It's
Right.
just
It's
it's
just
it's gonna take
going
you
to go.
nowhere.
Right. And I had to learn that the hard way. And so once when I was going through all of that and I realized like, all right, Chris, like take a step back. It was funny because when I was going through that, I was trying to really try to prove because I was really trying to prove to people like, look, this is not. I know this is how the way it looks like that I am, but
Mhm.
I'm not that person,
Right.
you know. And I was trying too hard to convince, family members. I was trying to convince, friends. I was trying to convince, people. And honestly, I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? These people are not. These people aren't me. Like I need to take a step back and I need to reevaluate myself. This is gonna take a little bit more it's like if you're changing parts out of a car, you're not gonna do it overnight, it's gonna take time. And another thing, Myra, you're not gonna get it right the first time. Everybody's gonna make mistakes. Even when you're trying to fix something, you're not gonna get it right the first time. That was my mistake. I was trying too hard. I was trying to convince the world, like, okay, well, I'm this person, and it just wasn't working because I was still failing of taking accountability.
You're still not focusing on
I
you.
still was not focusing, and I still wasn't taking that accountability. I still kept on trying to, compare to others, and I can't compare to others. I'm my own self, and I know what I did, and I just pretty much had to man the f up and just be like, you know what, take a step back, dig a little deeper, journal more if you have to. I don't know, like started spending more time with my kids. I started because my kids were my rocks, especially my oldest daughter. Because my oldest daughter, she's getting into this teenage phase now, and her way of life of thinking is, she amazes me sometimes with how the way she thinks and with the stuff that she tells me. And, I started to just cut back on everything. Like people at work would even tell me like, "Hey, look, are you okay? Like you're not really talking much." It's not that I was trying to not talk to people. It was just more so of like I was trying to refocus more on myself. And then before you know it, I'm starting to smile more, and people at work start to notice, "Hey, you're glowing more. You're smiling more. You look like you're losing more weight. Like you're looking good. You look like you're doing better." Some days were better than others, but that's how I knew that I was getting better. And still trying to be there for my mom, still trying to be there for my uncle, still trying to maintain, my family and everything, with my dad and, with my brother. And then my brother ends up moving to San Antonio, which made it a little bit more hard because, we were just kind of gaining our brother. We went through a phase in 2018 to where we kind of fell off, had a huge argument, and we were finally getting we were getting close again. So that was tough because then I was losing, my brother again. Um, but you have yourself, and that's all you have. Focus on prayer, forgiveness of yourself, and on what you can control. It's inevitable. And I tell people just do that. Just do that. A really quick story. I have a friend who this actually was in this was in oh man, I want to say this was like in October. She her boyfriend is from Mexico. He's traveling to Mexico, and he says, "Hey, look, due to service issues, I'll call you when I get down there to wherever he was going to Mexico." And she noticed that at the time that he had gave her that he was going to call her, she didn't hear from him, so she started to get worried. And so like me and her, like we've been close friends since what, 2011. Like we've been really close friends. And so, she was kind of there for me, to kind of help me through like my separation, just kind of be there for me. And but at the same time, just not trying to bother her because of with her, relationship and everything. And she calls me the next day saying that while her boyfriend was traveling down to Mexico, that he had got kidnapped by one of the cartels in Mexico, and that the people that were holding him captive had called her for ransom money. So she's freaking out, and I'm over here like, okay, I'm going through this change and all this stuff, and I'm over here focused on another stuff. And I was like, okay, but I need to be here for my friend. But this is a situation that's way out of my league. I don't know how to. I don't know what to say or to do. So I just kind of told her, I was like, look, okay, just take a deep breath because she's freaking out. It's like, take a deep breath, And I try to tell, okay, let's focus on the little things. We know that he's alive, and we know that they're not going to do anything to him. They just want, and unfortunately, stuff like that happens all the time. And so she was like, "Well, I mean, I have the money, I could do it." And I was like, "Okay, well." And then she started explaining to me all these processes that they do, I guess, to not make sure that things get tracked over the phone or something like that. And days would go by to where she wouldn't hear from them again. And so her anxiety and her mental health was going so bad. It was she thought, "Oh, he's probably not alive anymore," and everything. And I'm like, "It's gonna be okay. Just pray about it." We would pray on the phone. I was like, "You haven't given him any reasons to think that you're not gonna pay or anything like that." And it's kind of hard to tell a friend that it's gonna be okay when even I didn't know. You hear so many stories about what happens when people get kidnapped in Mexico that it's not going to end up well. So even I'm just like, okay, like just it's gonna be okay. Have faith in God and everything. And so sure enough, some way she was able to get it like paid. It was like through like a money transfer or something like that. And then more days happened to where she didn't hear from him because they were supposed to bring him down here. And she was really convinced that he wasn't like alive. And I kept on telling her like, look, everything's gonna be okay. Focus on what you control. And then she had family members of hers saying, "Oh no, he's dead. You just have to accept it." There were her family members telling her, "You're just gonna have to accept that he's not coming back." And so that was making her feel even worse. So I say that story because people will come into your life and try to bring you down with negativity. And you know what? 2 days later, she calls me crying, saying that they called her and that she had to drive to San Antonio to go pick him up. So I told her, I was like, you see, I like, do you see? Like, I told you everything was going to be okay. You have to focus on the little things. And while people in your family kept on telling you, well, things like that just don't go well, you're just going to have to accept it. Like, just move on with your life. And so to this very day, she tells me, had it not been for you, you got me through the most difficult time of my life. And it means something to me. And, when I know we were off air and, I showed you how someone commented on my motivational video, how they went through substance abuse and they went through treating people bad and everything. And for them to reach out to me and say that I had an impact on them, all it takes is for one person. And that for me is what motivates me even more to try to help people. There's probably people who are probably going to see this and they'll probably still say, oh, no, he's still that guy 10 months ago. And I don't care because I know who I am. And you have to block out people that will hold you back because these people are going to talk crap about you regardless. If they see you elevating, if they see you leveling up, if they see you doing whatever, they're gonna talk crap about you. That's just inevitable. That's just part of life. That's People are gonna do that.
Well, there's a saying
Mm-hmm.
that says, hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so knowing that and everybody goes through something, I don't know you. I didn't know you this deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would have never thought any of the things of your life
Mm-hmm.
experiences, right? So, um, even if I would see you often when we used to work together
Mm-hmm.
or for the same company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, even your peers, even the people you work closely, like they don't know what you're going through at all. So when when you start feeling people are bringing you down,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to understand that
Right.
hurt people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if you're hurt yourself and you're around other people that are hurting people,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not a good solution because they have their own, and you mentioned earlier you didn't want to bother people. They have their own things, they have their own
Mm-hmm.
life,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So and then you mentioned earlier, when you were going through this hard time that put a lot of pressure on you.
Right.
In a sense, you were broken, and you mentioned, I was bringing other people down with me.
Mm-hmm.
Hurt people,
Right.
hurt people,
Exactly.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so not knowing that when you feel somebody's trying to bring you down,
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole can of worms.
Right. Right.
Like do like if you have worms in your can yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother can of worms. And
Right.
the easiest and best thing to do is to learn how to create that distance
Right.
because you have your own worms you're trying to get to clean
Exactly.
out of your environment.
Right.
And so even though it may hurt sometimes,
Mhm.
because you mentioned you were engaged,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
I'm sure your fiance at the time, or she had said yes
Mhm.
at some point,
Mhm.
right? And then so I'm sure she didn't say yes because she didn't love you.
Mhm.
It was just that hurt people.
Right. Yeah,
And
she's
once you understand that, right?
right.
And you decide to turn that around, like I said, it takes time.
Mhm.
It's not like, let me write a summary.
Mhm.
Here you go. This is because it's, and I would say the same thing. Say, if somebody hurt me and somebody said, hey, I'm sorry, I'm a changed person from one day to the other or from 1 month to the other. And you know how hurt those people are, and you know how much they hurt me
Mhm.
or you or whoever. And then they come and say, hey, it just like it shows, you have to, everybody knows you have to take time and work on it because it takes time. And the beauty of it is it's understanding that and recognize it. And I do believe that you are changed because sometimes it takes, unfortunately,
Mhm.
sometimes it takes something that shatters your world to see it.
Right. Right.
It
Exactly.
takes it takes it there's a yin and yang,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So on the light side, on the white side, there's always a black dot, meaning even though life is good,
Right. Right.
be careful because the black dot is there, meaning it that's like that's the sign that something can anytime at
Right.
any point can come, whether it's sickness,
Mhm.
whether it's, whatever it is that comes and shatters your world, that possibility is there, and it's there,
Right.
right? And same thing with like the dark side. The beauty of the dark side is that you can't see the light.
Right.
It's easier to see the light or or what truly matters, that
Mhm.
light. It's easier to see it when you're in the dark.
Right. Right.
You see, then you start seeing what matters.
Right. Right.
And you can't see that in the daylight when everything is good. It's foggy.
Right. Right.
Everything is good. It's hard to you take things for granted.
Exactly.
So in the daylight, that's the springtime. That's when it's time to work and build things. That's the time to take advantage that life is okay right now. I know because the black dot is there. I know that
Mhm.
anything can come and shake my world at any point. So for now, I'm going to take advantage and I'm
Right.
going to run with what I have and
Exactly.
I'm going to build on it. And when that darkness does come, because it will come,
Mhm.
it comes to everyone
Right.
at different levels, and that just depends where you're at. That
Right.
level, it depends on how many blind sides you have,
Right.
right? How many things you don't see, and it's when you're in that dark moment
Mhm.
when you can see
Right.
what it is that matters. That's that light.
Absolutely. And you hit it right on the nail. When you had mentioned yes, when my fiance had said yes to me, she said yes to the good person, but then I ended up turning into the to that bad person, so it was definitely understandable and like you said, just taking it for granted and the things that I did wrong. Acknowledging what I did and how the of who I was affecting. I think for me, when it was said that, I've hurt people that will probably have a hard time trusting again, that's it hurts me that I made these people feel this way because I never want to affect people in their life going forward. And what I went through, my separation, everything I've done has molded me into this person
Mhm.
today. And I feel like I'm not gonna say I'm not happy of how the way things happened. I'm not happy of how the way it ended, but I am happy that I went through this pain. I'm happy that I went through the change, the journaling, because I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research of like anxiety. I did a lot of research of just different things that I was going through, what I was feeling. Because I could not I could not sleep for 2 months, Myra. Like I there was like a good month to where I did not eat. I just didn't. I was just going through a lot, and then you can imagine with my uncle, and then with my mom, and then like I said, I live by myself. I mentioned in my video that when you live by yourself, not really having someone to talk to, it can cause. Sometimes it's a good thing because you have your peace, and then but sometimes it's a bad thing because you overthink too much, and that's where the overthinking thing comes into play. And then you start to go back. Then you start to will yourself back again, like, oh man, like I could have still did this better. Yeah, I could have done. I didn't have to remind myself. No, 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 Chris. Like you've already done that. You've already went back and forth. Forgive yourself. Know who you are. Know who you are now. And like I said, every morning I wake up every day and I say, I am better than I was tomorrow. And I know that I will make someone very happy one day and they're going to be the happiest person.
Because
And
now you're a better man.
exactly, I'm a better person and they're going to get the best version of me.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I'm happy about that. Just, I'm excited for what the future holds.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for now that I know what I want as far as what I want to do, as far as with my YouTube and hopefully one day to have my own podcast show and, you know, looking up to motivation like you motivate me and uh, just looking up to people who motivate me to become better, and I think that's all it is. You need to surround yourself with
Mhm.
with people that will help you elevate and to help you level up. And like I said, when you had reached out, immediately I did all the research, on your YouTube. I did all the research on your podcast, and it was amazing. And that in itself helps me. Like that's something I want to do one day. But baby
Mhm.
steps.
Yeah.
Again, you can't patience,
Right.
right? Baby steps. With my YouTube, like obviously it's still a work in progress. Like I want to be monetized by YouTube, but obviously you need at least 1,000 subscribers, 400 watch hours. You need at least a million views and stuff like that. So those are the baby steps I'm trying to get to
Yeah.
because I do know what I want now. I want to have a lot of money one day. I want to have my own house. Like I want to have a family again. I want that. I want that. And I want to be able to look back and say, my screw ups don't define me. It happened. I know I've affected a lot of people and I've apologized. I've apologized to those people. I have done that. I've done that and I asked for forgiveness and that's all I could do. And now I move forward.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I'm at in life, and this is where I'll continue to help people.
I love it. I love it. And I say this again because you cannot, well, you cannot help somebody that needs help and you've never gone through that.
Right.
So early on, I had a guest that said that he was going through a hard time, and I think he reached out even for like help, like help as like for therapy,
Right. Right. Right.
but he couldn't find anybody he could relate to.
Right.
So he's like, that ended up not working for him. He couldn't find somebody that could help him because he felt nobody understood him.
Right.
He felt that nobody had gone, like these people he was talking to,
Hmm.
how could they give him advice
Right.
if first of all they didn't look like they wouldn't understand
Hmm.
what he went through.
Right.
So that's what and basically at that point, like you have to go through those hard times
Hmm.
to be much more powerful in helping people even better because it's like this feeling, this connection
Hmm.
that you can't describe it and you can't make it.
Right.
It's like this energy that's either there or it's not.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
you just can't make it up.
Right.
And when you go as you've been through these experiences and you choose to be better and persevere and you choose to not be the same person or at least try to escape out of that person that was there,
Hmm.
and you do what you can,
Right.
eventually things will start falling into place like the domino effect.
Right. Right.
You start changing your habits.
Hmm.
You start changing the way you think.
Right.
You start changing who you listen to
Right.
and so forth. And I mean, you know, I feel like I say it often, but I mean, I have to keep saying it. Like habits compound.
Right.
All habits.
Yeah.
You do good habits will compound.
Right.
You do bad habits will compound.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier you had 4 days of continuous bad things happen to you back to back,
Mhm.
right? So, i- you're in your head, you have all these things going on. You forgot to check your sticker. Why?
Mhm. Right.
Because you have so many things. You're
Right.
it's like one, you were speeding, you got a ticket.
Mhm.
It's like it's all these things that if you don't just, you mentioned, you're a big fan of like just stopping and taking a deep breath. If you don't stop
Mhm.
and take a deep breath and you don't put a stop at some point,
Right.
those will continue.
Right.
And you're like, "Oh man, I'm just like there's been so many things happening, like this is it."
Right.
That's where you make it stop. If you didn't say that,
Mhm.
it'll roll over to one, and eventually you end up on the street homeless.
Right. Exactly. And it's funny. The other day at the gym, there's this guy who where he's I see him in there almost every day. He's really fit, really this dude looks good. And I went up to him one day and I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, would you I have my own YouTube channel. Would you be willing to get a training session in together for my YouTube channel?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." And I was like, "Man, you make everybody in here look bad. You look really good." And he told me, he's like, "Yeah, that's what 4 years sober would do to you." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he told me that he used to be in a gang, to where he was addicted to drugs. He almost overdosed 2 times. Um, and then he was in rehab for alcohol, I think he said, like, 3 times. And then one day, one of his buddies, like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the gym. You wanna come with me?" And he went with him, and he said it was on that day when he stepped foot in the gym, that's what changed his life. So he's 4 years sober, never had a drink, never done anything with drugs involved, and he's looking the best that he's ever had, and he has his first show coming in May, and
Mm.
that to me was amazing. And I told him, I was like, this I work out at 5 in the morning, so he's telling me this, like, at 5:15 in the morning because it was when we got there. I was like, "Dude, you already made my day. You've already made I'll probably have a shitty day for the rest of the day, but your story is what motivates me." And that's amazing because we can all relate, Myra. Like, I talked about the over adversity that I overcame. I know I'm still gonna go through more adversity. We all are. It's just part of life. And like we touched on earlier, if you're there's always room to grow. But with what I went through yesterday or last year or the year before, maybe that will help me overcome the
It
adversity
will.
coming forward.
Yeah.
And I can use that to help others.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing feeling when you could do, but definitely it's very important to distract those that will try to bring you down or try to, just create distraction. Always stay positive the best way that you can. I know it's easier said than done, especially when it's so overwhelming with whatever situation that you have.
I have a rule for that.
What is that?
It's doesn't matter where you are every day. It's do the best you can
Right.
because that's all you can do. It's so simple. Every in everything, like every situation, every moment, even like from the moment you wake up to the moment you put your body to rest and get
Right.
it ready for the next day. Every we every breathe every breath we take,
Mhm.
it's at some point we have to make an action, whether
Exactly.
even if it is, hey, do I take a pre-workout before I go work out?
Right. Right.
It's all a choice.
Mhm.
Everything is a choice. Everything is a negotiation, right?
Mhm.
And so many things are on autopilot that you don't really think about them. But even then, when there are choices to be made,
Mhm.
and this is why, when you do the best you can,
Right.
so simple, everything, anything. When you do the best you can, that's all you can do. You can go to bed feeling okay because
Right.
it doesn't matter if you didn't get the outcome you
Right.
didn't expect. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if maybe the date didn't unfold like you wished it had.
Right.
However, if you did everything the best
That you could.
that you could, that's enough reason to go to bed and say, you know what, just we'll take care of it tomorrow.
Right.
It's so
Exactly.
simple. It's such a small, like, it's such a simple rule to have, but if you think about that often, especially with every choice you have to make, and some choices are harder than others, maybe it's like, is this a time that I need to, create some distance with this person that I'm like, I'm struggling myself. Um, that I'm trying to overcome this person or this thing or whatever. This is causing some friction
Hmm.
with my goals.
Right.
I just need to create some distance, and understanding why you did that and understanding that you did the best you could at the time you had.
Right.
Right? Like, and you do that every day. Think about that. You mentioned like earlier, just do the best you can. It's if you only focus not on the huge mountain of where I want to go, where I want to be, but if you just say, you know what, the goal is I'm just going to do slightly better today than I did yesterday.
Right.
Just slightly better today than I did yesterday. And look, everything ties up. Then we talk about habits.
Right.
Habits compound. So when you just do the best you can every day, well, let me rephrase that. The focus would be to do better than you did yesterday yourself. When you compare yourself to yesterday, because that's the only thing you can compare yourself to.
Right.
Anything else is just an illusion in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody is different. Everybody has a different lifestyle. Nobody grew up like the way you grew up.
Right.
Like, not even like nobody has lived the life you've lived.
Right.
That's why when they say, oh, you're unique,
Mm-hmm.
it's because think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, our past is basically like a collage of who we are today.
Right. Right.
And your collage is not the same as anybody else's.
Right.
So comparing yourself to others or other situations or whatever, that's really just an illusion.
Right.
That's really just that's nothing true, nothing. However, when you compare yourself to who you were yesterday,
Right.
now it takes a whole big toll out of way because you don't have to focus on the big. You have in the back of your mind, you've written down your goals. This
Mhm.
is where I want to go. This is where I want to be. Okay, you break it down. Okay, what do I need to start doing
Right.
to get there? And okay, all right. So next day, what did I do yesterday, and how do I improve on that? How do I continue doing that?
Right.
And then you start doing the same thing, and then you start becoming familiar with that. So now you're doing it faster.
Right.
And so now you're moving faster because those things, they're already kind of like, okay,
Right.
I'm already here now. Okay, I did that. Yes. Okay, I'm good. And habits compound.
Right.
You start doing those things
Right.
little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? In 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
those little habits are not going to be just little,
Right. Right.
right? You're gonna look back and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like in 6 years, good habits repeated and improved are
Right.
not going to do nothing.
Right. Right.
Right. Same thing with the battle. But and sometimes if you're like, oh man, I'm just not getting there fast enough, it might be because you're fluctuating from good to bad, and you're not really making that huge progress that you want to make.
Right.
Because maybe you're too focused on the big mountain, and then you have things and it just shatters. But breaking it down
Mm-hmm.
and just comparing yourself to yesterday,
Right.
because it's the closest thing you can compare yourself to. And it's true because that is you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And also another thing too, as far as when you're elevating yourself and when you're making yourself better, one thing that I tell people, and this kind of goes to the overthinking part, your mind is your worst enemy. It really is. Like that's what could set you back. That's what your mind is. You overthink things and you just like, okay, I don't know if I could do this. There's times where you literally just feel like this is just overwhelming.
Mm.
However, when you believe in yourself, because I believe in myself. I really do. I really do. This month of April was kind of like an emotional setback for me. Um, it was emotional setback for me for something that happened, but the outcome of it has made me stronger, and I know going forward, I will not allow this to happen again, and everything is going to. But it was my mind just overthinking it, and I was like, you know what, I was wrong. But going forward, I know that I have people out there that love me. I have people out there that care for me. I have people out there who believe in me, and there's a saying that I kind of created. Well, I saw it, but then I kind of twisted up in my own words. It's called murdering the person that I used to be, because I guarantee you, I'm gonna look back on this, and although I'm not happy with how the way things happened and how the way it went down in my life, I'm happy that I went through it. And you can't take those for granted. And because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself. Then you'll, like I said, the domino effect. People will start to come into your life that, like, who are you? And this was meant for this person to come into your life. I do also believe in that too, Myra. I do believe that people, from what we believe, are supposed to come into your life forever, but maybe they were meant to come in your life for a season to teach you something about yourself. Or maybe they were meant to come into your life for you to teach them something. And I truly believe in that with me going forward, because I've had people tell me, hey, you're a good listener. I've had somebody tell me the other day, you have a very soothing, calming voice. This lady at work, very nice, sweet lady.
I would agree.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. But yeah, and then you start to smile more, and also in the midst of all that, one thing I forgot to mention, forgiving yourself and everything. Peace is very important. Peace,
That's where I mean, when you
peace.
do the best you can do, I mean, there's nothing else that that would really like that's why sometimes maybe regret happens and things like that, but when for
Hmm.
certain you did the best you could, I mean,
Right,
that's peace to me,
right, right.
right? Like, because you can go to bed rested knowing that you just did the best you could.
Did the
and
best you
and
could.
I and I'm s- I, and I agree with you when you talk about like um I think it was like taking what it was leading doing the best you can, and that things will come. Well, yeah, I was trying to say how you said it, but see, I blanked out.
Like when you're going through things and not taking it for granted.
No, it was um okay, I can't think but anymore, but it was but at the end of the day, it was just doing the best you can do, basically.
Right, right.
It's that's peace to me. And but not only that, like especially with wanting to or having that heart to help other people
Right.
and going through these struggles
Mhm.
yourself, I see the strength in you
Right.
because you keep wanting to find out answers and be better.
Exactly.
And when you do that and when you persevere, because you will,
Right.
or anyone, right?
Mhm.
Um like the ability to help others is much more powerful.
Right.
Not because some people are not as strong
Mhm.
to say, "Hey, I need to pick myself up."
Right, right.
And earlier you mentioned like a thought crossed your brain where it was like you even consider maybe even suicide.
Mhm.
Think about it. Suicide is an all-time high
Right,
right now.
right, right.
All-time high in the world,
Right,
right? So that just tells me that some people throw the towel like faster, and
right.
I see you strong. I feel
Mhm.
that you are strong, and you are just dealing with the cards you're dealt
Right,
and how you're playing it, but now you're wanting to play your hand better.
right.
you're paying more attention to your hand versus, just being there and taking what you have. You're you're trying to play your hand more strategically,
Right.
and you're learning the game essentially,
Mhm.
right? Of
Right.
like navigating and figuring out yourself.
Right.
So I I I applaud you for that, and
Thank you.
I find that myself inspiration. It's very inspiring, like even for myself to see, people keep fighting and not wanting to give up and
Right.
trying to be better. Not only that,
Mm.
help others.
Right.
So in my question to you is like where are your goals? I understand you want to help others
Mhm.
and with your YouTube, where do you want to take your YouTube? What's your goal that you've set with your YouTube dream?
My goal is to, or number one, I want to be a licensed personal trainer, which I know that could be easily obtained just with enough work. I want to do that to help people um, be happy with themselves.
Mm,
If they're not in a good place, with their body. I've had people at the gym that I used to know before that I see them, and they'll ask me, like, hey, what can I do? What can I do better on this? And I try to help them with that. So I want to be a professional or licensed trainer, but also
license like in like personal training or like okay.
personal training. Sorry, and then also I want to. And I thought about this. I think I do want to be a coach as far as like helping people, motivational, and I think the YouTube content is a good way to get that out there.
Yeah.
And because again, I believe everything happens for a reason, Myra. Everything happens for a reason. For some reasons that we cannot understand, we may not like what the outcome may be. We can't understand that. You can't question him of, okay, well, why did this happen? I wanted this to happen. You just have to trust the process, and that goes with patience and faith. And like I said, I've sat on this camera and I owned up to things, and I'm sure people will look at me and be like, "Oh man, I didn't know that about him." Either they're gonna look at me in a bad way or they're gonna look at me in a good way. Either way, like I'm not gonna care what they think because I know who I am, and if these people get to know me or get to re-know me, then they'll know this new side of Chris Reyes. And I want to be able to help people that made mistakes in life because there are people I've seen people out there that just hold such a burden over their head. And if I could be the one to tell you, like I made a real last Monday, and I know we kind of talked about it off air, but it was called the Monday Blues Reel, and it was basically people who are having like bad days, like having just going through so much. I've seen people who are struggling with losses in their family to this very day. They just, I don't know, they're drinking all the time to get through it. That's just how the way they cope. Or if they're just going through financial job issues, relationship issues. And although I'm not like a dating coach or anything like that, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. But just like you said, just do the best you can. Everything will be okay because God won't put you through anything that you can't handle. But you need people to support you. You need a support system. The people who will care for you, people who will love you. If you need to pick up the phone at 3 in the morning and know that that person's going to answer, because I told people with that with me, like I don't care, just reach out because I don't want you to do anything to yourself because you're going through something. Because if you do something to yourself, then I feel like I failed as a friend or as a brother or as a father, and I want to be that inspiration to help you because I know how the way it feels. I've hurt people before, and it's not a good feeling. And because of that, I probably damaged them their trust again. And I all I could do is become better and ask for forgiveness, which I did, and that was my closure. That was my closure for myself. I asked for forgiveness, and I move forward. I move on.
Yeah, there's a really good book. I'll have to tell you the title later. I think I read it like last year, so I can't
Mhm.
remember the title, but basically it's about so when you have a lot of things in your mind and things aren't going the way you want them to and you
Mhm.
want to start reversing that,
Right.
you have to it means you've been trying to control the plane
Mhm.
you're in,
Right.
and obviously it's not taking you where you want to be. Now say you're flying this plane, right, which is your life,
Right.
and everything under
Mhm.
there's say you're flying over a forest,
Mhm.
and it's all cloudy. Say you can't find the spot to land safely
Right.
your plane. So what do? You have to let your co-pilot take over.
Exactly. I like that. I like that.
And that could be your faith. That could be your, hey, I'm just going to follow. I'm going to stop trying to take control and I'm going to just kind of follow what I feel is right. I'm going to hand it over to my co-pilot, which is, it could be your faith, right?
Exactly.
So in a sense, you're going to say, okay, I'm just going to trust the process. I'm going to hand over the wheel to my co-pilot so that it lands it as safely as it can. Once you start feeling like, okay, I've landed. I'm at a base here. I have all these things I need to fix.
Right.
But okay, at least I'm in a position that from here on I can start taking action.
Right.
So then you go to it's a forest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to look for the biggest, darkest tree.
Right.
Which is your biggest, like whatever's heaviest on your shoulders.
Right.
That's the first thing you're going to see, right? So you look at it in the eye, straightforward. That means taking ownership.
Right.
Like you don't shy away, or maybe for other people that indulge in drugs or alcohol or whatever, it's leave all that alone. You're going to look at the big tree.
Exactly.
Right? So then you see it, and then you get a basket and you start picking up the trees that are closest to you. The apples that are closest to you. Meaning those, you have a big problem. Now you break down the details of the tree, the apples that fell from that dark tree.
Right.
And because earlier you just mentioned, you've apologized.
Mm-hmm.
That means, maybe this apple means I need to come and apologize to this person.
Right.
Okay. And so you start picking some of those up.
Uh-huh.
And so they're no longer laying and scattered. You've picked them up, you've taken ownership, you've addressed those. It doesn't mean those apples, whatever. You've just addressed those. You need to address those to move forward if those things are weighing on you, right?
Right.
So, and then what happens, you take that and you plant a new tree.
Right.
That you want to water. You take those apples that are no longer good or that you've affected, that they've fallen already.
Right.
You plant a new tree. And so then what do? You start watering the new tree, the tree you want to grow, the tree that's been grown and dark and ugly and it's dark. You let that alone. You no longer feed it, because if you feed it, that big ugly tree is going to keep growing.
Right.
So you plant a green tree, a tree that you want to grow, and you start watering that tree.
Right.
What's going to happen is this tree is going to start growing and this tree is going to start shrinking because you're no longer feeding it.
Right.
Right?
You're 100%.
And then you start watering that if you want to, once you're ready to tackle on another issue, then okay, you start picking up those apples.
Right.
And you take those apples and then you plant another tree.
Right.
The tree you want to water. And then you stop watering that one and you start watering this one.
Exactly.
That one is going to die in itself because you've stopped watering it. You're no longer attending to it.
Right.
Now you're busy watering these other trees. But these ones grew without even you knowing you planted those. Right. And you were watering those. But now that now that you've landed your plane, now that you've landed over the forest that you've created, now that it's safe and you're seeing it closely and you're seeing it with awareness, now you're able to handle it. And that's when you're like, okay, I'm in a better position now. I'm in a better mindset. I'm not where I want to be, but at least I see the problem.
Right.
Now I'm gonna do what I need to do to start planting my other tree.
Yeah. It's funny because when I love your analogy of that, and at one point, Myra, I was telling myself, I don't know. I kept on blaming myself, and I was like, I don't know why God continues to give me the hardest road. I don't know why. I would be questioning why me, but then I started saying, this is how He wanted it to be. This is how the way was meant for me. For me to go through what I went through and to acknowledge in front of the whole world of the hurtful things that I've done and how I've came to become the best version of myself, and to acknowledge that and to take accountability and to change in routines is scary because
Hmm.
journaling is something I never did before. I never did that. If you ask old friends before, that's not Chris's thing. Journaling, even even listening to classical music is something I never did, but I find it very therapeutic, very soothing. And just with different things, just looking up to YouTube videos of inspiration, podcast, manifestation. But you can never question God's will. Every day we are a work in progress. And that's something that I want people to know. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. So don't try to be perfect for anyone. Don't let people gaslight you or make you feel like you have to be perfect. Don't let people bring you down. Don't let them remind you of the old version of yourself. You know who you are. And I love the whole co-pilot analogy that you gave. That's amazing. And I truly do believe in that. Everything happens for a reason, and everything's going to be okay. And
100%. And like, think about it. Like for anyone, you graduate high school, it's kind of like the starting point when you really start you start feeling like, okay, now I'm an adult. Okay, right? Like whatever that means to you, to you as a person, anyone, right? And so think about it, since you're 18 up to today,
mhm,
um that all that time, it seems like maybe a long time, but it's only a small portion of the life you have left.
right, right,
And
exactly.
so now knowing that, and everybody's timeline is different, but once you realize that,
Mhm,
okay, it's time to start building
exactly.
the life that I want to live,
Right.
right? So, and when you start focusing on that, then you start you start living a different life.
Right.
And sure, you'll have things you have to overcome still, but
Mhm,
now it's worth it because you're overcoming them because you're living the life you're building.
right.
You're not overcoming stuff or things without any guidance. What, okay, we'll just see where this takes me.
Right.
Like, I'm just gonna overcome them, but we'll see what happens.
Mhm,
No, you're at least overcoming these challenges, but there's a purpose behind those.
right.
They're not just things that life throws at you, and you allow life to control you versus you being in control. I really believe that that well, I think everyone, it doesn't matter where they are in life,
Mhm,
believes in a higher power.
right.
And even if you think, hey, it's me, I'm the god, I'm like, for people that think that way,
Mhm,
it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, everybody thinks there's a higher power,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So that being said, it's like, when you know that, and you start thinking, okay, well, it's up to me, like, I'm just the shell.
Yes.
There's something inside of me that's bigger than me, and yet we're all together because we need each other. So in some sense, we're all connected in
Exactly.
this mystical way. I'm just the shell, and I just have to live the experience that I need to live. This is outside my control. You didn't ask to be here in this life.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it's a miracle itself
Mhm,
that there's one tiny sperm that made it
right.
out of quadrillions,
Right.
and yet you are here.
Exactly.
So you alone, you're a miracle
Right.
within itself.
Right.
There's your life, right?
Right.
Like, if you stop breathing,
Mhm,
that's it.
right.
You're just this is just a shell,
Right.
right? So then it's like, what are you gonna do? So when you talk about like prayer, I feel like that in what however people do it, some people meditate,
Mhm.
some people pray, but it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
You at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you call it.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're connecting
Of course.
with something
Mhm.
bigger than you.
Right. And it's crazy. Sometimes when we get overwhelmed in the moment, it could be, and it's okay to feel that way. When I tell people when they're going through things, it's okay to process. It's okay to kind of take time for yourself to kind of gather your feelings. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to
I think it's part of the
it's
process.
part of the process, and it's okay. Take time off, do what you need to do to heal. But it's what I like to call it. It's rehab time. It's time to get back on it because you can't keep feeling sorry for yourself. And when we get that way, when we pull ourselves back, it could definitely cause damage. But you are your own self. You are your only self. I said this in my video. Love yourself because you're the only one who's going to be spending the rest of your life with your own self. And
Yes.
so it's very, very true. And
You will always live with
you
yourself.
always live with
You can,
yourself.
you will always
Always.
live with yourself.
Exactly. And I think it's everything's gonna be okay, especially for those who are dealing with trauma in their life, dealing with negativity, and I will help be their voice. And I know a year ago it didn't seem like that, but hey, you know what? I went through something, and I'm not glad that it happened, but I'm glad that I went through it because you mentioned we're a miracle, and before we were born, God already knows how your life is gonna pan out.
You think
Y
so?
Yeah, your story's already written, and God's not gonna put you through anything that you can't handle, but you need to figure out how you're gonna overcome that. It's adversity, it's part of our life, it's inevitable. You have to If you make mistakes, yes, you have to suffer the consequences, that's part of the process. It's what do you do with those consequences? Do you use that to fuel you? Do you use that to piss you off to make you better? Because that's what I do. When I'm in the gym or anything, I use the things I've done wrong as man, I hate myself for that. I want to get better. And some people use it as fuel, or you're gonna use that to feel bad for yourself and just mope. Or some people use that and don't even the consequence. You don't learn anything from it, and then they completely make those mistakes.
Right, right.
So
And that's where I think like that's where the value is as putting yourself out there and helping people see these things.
right,
And when people feel a certain way and they start researching in YouTube and then maybe they come across some of your content
right,
and then they start listening to your story and then they find they can relate
right,
and then you provide constructive feedback or options on what you went through and how you got through it
hmm
and then you start helping people change their own lives. It sounds like that's kind of like the route you want to go.
right,
Just think about that,
right.
right? Like, like it just, and then you build on that, and
Exactly.
then you'll continue. Then you'll figure out a way to continue overcoming new adversities, new challenges,
Exactly.
and then it'll continue, right?
Right.
So it's I think it's beautiful what you're doing,
Exactly.
and even your motivation
hmm
and just your thrive of you know I was in this moment, I was in this dark moment at the time.
hmm
This is what I learned.
Right.
And this is not only that, this is how I got out of it, which that's the hard part, right? How
Right.
do you get out of it?
Right. Exactly.
And I commend you for that.
I
Seriously.
appreciate it. Thank you. When one chapter closes, another one opens, and it's your choice how the way you write that chapter. And like I said, your past mistakes do not define you, and it's very important. But I think forgive yourself. Everything will pave the way. I would have never thought that by me doing that motivational video that I did, That was my first one that I did, by the way. I was nervous about it. I didn't know if I was, you know, I was like, okay, am I, doing this even right? Am I even reaching out to people? So to have the person that I showed you who commented on it, just even you reaching out to me, like obviously it's reaching out to people. So my word is actually getting out, and it's amazing. It at least tells me that I'm doing something right. If I can at least touch one person, it lets me know that I'm doing something right. And for me, that's enough to keep on going harder and stronger.
Hmm.
But use your mistakes as fuel to make you stronger.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you are just becoming this role model to your
Mhm.
daughters, right?
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, when they start facing bigger challenges in life,
Mhm.
who are they going to have?
Right.
They're who they're going to go to.
Right.
They're going to go
Exactly.
to their father,
Right.
right? At least you're going to be one of them, if
Right.
not the person
Mhm.
they go to, right? So, and what if he, like, for example, I'll give the another analogy, like the when you're traveling somewhere through an air through fly when you're flying somewhere,
Right.
they say, well, part of the instructions is if you have to put your mask on,
Right.
don't put it to your child.
Right.
Put it to yourself first before
Exactly.
you help the person next to you.
Right.
Because if you try helping the person next to you before you help yourself, you may not make it
Right.
on time, and then you didn't nobody helped anyone,
Right. Right.
right? So you have to help yourself first before you can help others.
Exactly. Exactly. I also feel like as parents with our children, we're still going to be facing adversity, and because like I said, when they get older, we have to be role models for them. And I wanted to be an example. If you can get through
Mm,
anything, if you put your mind to it, you'll get through anything. I was a little late making that choice, but you know what? Like I always like to say, it's better late than never. It's better late than never. It's never too late.
agreed.
So,
Agreed. So you're 36.
mhm,
Most people retire around what, 65. So that
mhm,
means you have much more life
right,
than even the one you've experienced
right,
already, and
right,
that's a lot.
right.
So if you're 65,
Mhm.
what would you what how would you think of yourself today? Think about that. I know you probably haven't thought about that, but
That's a good question.
so if you're 65 and you no longer have the energy that you have today
Right,
because you're still young,
right,
you're still full of dreams, you're
mhm,
motivated, you have lots of reasons
right.
to keep continue fighting and thriving.
Mhm.
So if you're 65 and maybe your energy levels are not the way they are today, what
Mhm.
would you tell yourself today?
I think it would have to definitely do like okay with mm. So I guess I have a question to that. Would it be like I've already went through what I went through and then I'm
Yeah.
65? Okay, so already having the experience that I went through and then I'm
Yeah,
65.
today, to
And
who you
then
are today,
right, right.
as of like today.
So now that I have a better understand what you're saying, if I were to
Meaning my my the purpose the reason I ask you this question is because let's look at the future you want to build now.
Mhm,
So if let's fast forward,
mhm,
because when you're 65 you can't go back in time. But
right,
right now we can think of, okay, if I'm 65 and I am no longer capable of doing all the things that I'm capable of today,
right,
especially with time. We talk about time.
right,
When you're 65, you're closer to the end
right.
than you were when you were born, right?
Yeah.
So what would you tell yourself today?
This might seem kind of like a vague answer, but I think I would tell myself, you did good, Chris. You did good. You did the best you could. And you did good.
Yeah.
And that's really all you can do because I know now that I have a better understanding what you're saying, I kid you not, 2 nights ago, I thought to myself, if I were to die, a very old age, I want to be able to look back on my life, while I'm in heaven and say, you know what, you did good. We had a good run. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so is with what would be your ultimate goal? Where it is it that what is your wildest dream moving forward with the dreams you have now with
Mhm.
like, building your channel and helping others?
Yeah, I want a family. I want a family again. I want that, and I want to give. I want to be able to support my family. I want to make money. I want to be rich. I want that. I'm sitting here and I want to level up and do things, and I want to have money, and I want to help people. I want to inspire you. I can't even tell you how many times I see people under a bridge. If I have like a single dollar, I will give it to them. I try my best, to give the best way that I can.
Mhm.
And my goal is to have a family. I want to travel. I want to travel around. I want to go to Rome, to Italy. That's my go to. Um, and I just want to. I want to. I want to be a beacon for others. For to to inspire other people.
Yeah.
And just with even by you reaching out, it really meant a lot. Like I said, the whole post that I made about it, the whole collage that I did, that's how excited I was because it really meant let me know that I'm doing something right. Because I there were times, Myra, where I doubted myself. There were times that I wondered, am I doing the right thing? But sometimes all it takes is one person, But you you doubt yourself because other people put you down, and so therefore they make you think that you're doing something wrong. But it's one of those, you can't give up on yourself when others give up on you.
Right.
So, and that's one message that I would be more than happy to tell in the camera, like, don't give up on yourself when others give up on you, because it will happen. It will happen, and you just gotta stay the course. Love yourself. Surround yourself with people who will love you and will trust you. So,
I love
so
it. I love it.
thank you. Of
One last question. Well, before we get there, I do want to say I appreciate you
course, thank
being
you.
here. I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing
Mhm.
your story. And, I know that's not easy, especially, with the experience you had at a very young age
Mhm.
and still coming through, keep fighting and being able to say that and wanting to be better and wanting to get past that. Not only that, and wanting to help others as well. I am inspired by that.
Thank
I
you.
because I know it's not easy.
Right.
And that's I know it's not easy, and that's me not even knowing or experiencing what you've been through. So I know that alone has to be much harder. So I really applaud you, and I am so looking forward for all the content that you put out.
Thank you.
I'm looking
Appreciate it.
forward for the success that's coming to you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to watching you be the role model and being that coach and being the man
Thank
that
you.
you want to be,
I appreciate it.
that you're becoming and that you want to become.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that, all these experiences will definitely help you have that better relationship with your future wife,
Right. Thank
and
you.
just live that much more of a better life because now it's going to be now then it's you'll know better basically.
Right. Of
You
course.
you'll be able to be more aware
Of course.
of even every action, every
Right.
word, everything. And I have no doubt that you have a great heart. I feel it. I
Thank
feel
you.
that you truly do care and you
Thank you.
truly do want to be a better version of yourself. And I feel it and I know it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me
And
talk.
so, one last thing, one last question I'd like to ask you that I ask every guest,
Mhm.
and that is, what is your personal definition of happiness? What does happiness mean to you?
Definitely. Different answers. Different answers to that. One would have to be peace.
Mm,
Peace. Establish peace with yourself, with those that you love. Definitely peace is that could define happiness as far as like growth. And also for me, I love seeing, and this might also be like a vague answer. I love seeing people happy. If I can scroll through Facebook and I see someone who got engaged or someone who got promoted, that stuff's happy to me because it elevates me, like it touches me in a way that I want to become better. because although I may feel right now that like while my life may not go as how the way I wanted it to be, I know that I'm either going to have that as well or it's even something better based on what God wants it to be. So peace and happiness would definitely be my definitely answer for that.
I love that.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Well,
Absolutely.
make sure to follow Chris. How can they find you again?
Reyes underscore get fit 87. So just mixing up my concept with training and, self motivation and everything. So absolutely. And thank you for having me. And again, congratulations on everything. I'm very proud of you. And you are definitely someone that I look up to. And you are going the way. And I can't wait to see everything that you got coming to you.
Thank you. We'll have to do
Absolutely.
it again.
Of course. Absolutely. I'll be here
Yes.
for
All
you.
right. All right, everyone. Make sure you subscribe and you follow and stay tuned.
Absolutely.